Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 306, O'Malley versus Dvalishvili, also known as Noche UFC. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. But I think we have to address the big issue right off the top.
All right.
One thing that we always try to be is be totally honest with our listeners. And unfortunately, on the recap show this past week, I think you really showed a lack of character. And I don't even know if I can do a show with you anymore after you said that I was away because I was camping. No, Ben, I was in the land of Bo Nickel. I was at Penn State. I went to the Penn State football game.
That's right. I lied. I lied to our people. It will be a long, long time before they can ever fully trust me again, to say nothing of the damage that I have done to our working relationship that's going on 5 years now. Like, I don't know how you come back from this, like,
how could you forget about Bo?
I mean, lying about where your co-host is on a week off, it is the hitting a woman of the Shillan and Duffy show. As Dana White says, you just don't come back from that, except you do. And we will talk about it again a week from now.
Just for the record, in fairness to Ben, I was camping the weekend before that when we had no fights. So
yeah, I can't be expected to keep track of where this man is.
Yeah, I can't keep up. I get
most
around
interesting
like
man in Rhode Island. I can't keep up.
Yeah, I get around like the Haktua girl. I'm everywhere.
Much thanks, obviously, to Dane Fox, longtime Bloody Elbow contributor, newest member of the Sherdog team, for stepping up on the recap last night. I think we and the listeners had a good time, but definitely good to have you back. And this is it. This is the card that Dana White has been telling us for almost a year now. It goes beyond the usual level of hyperbole. I mean, he's literally been saying that we're about to witness the greatest combat sports event of all time. A few times he slipped and basically said that we're about to witness the greatest sporting event of all time. The Sphere in Las Vegas is where this is going to take place. I mean, if you've watched any UFC events over the last year, you've probably seen teasers for this thing. If you've not been to Vegas since they built Sphere, it is now like a dominant piece of the landscape there. It is, in fact, the Sphere with the LEDs all on the outside, and the inside is a state-of-the-art, like 360-degree audio visual spectacle. And this is going to be the first MMA event there. Sphere is used to putting on things like music, concerts, Cirque du Soleil type spectacles. The UFC is going there now. And on top of it being the UFC's debut at Sphere, it is also the, I guess, second official Noche UFC, a night of fights intentionally put together to kind of celebrate Latino fighters, specifically Mexican fighters. What are your thoughts on this one? Like, how excited are you for it? How excited are you for the kind of audio visual fireworks that they're probably got in store for the Sphere?
All right, so I kind of have two views on this. So how excited am I? First, the card itself, I'm gonna give it like a B because it's a pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. So it's not like top heavy with name. I mean, sorry, it is top heavy, and then it kind of, the rest of the card is a little shallow with the names that you expect to see on the main card of a pay-per-view. Mm. That said, the fighters that are on the card is really good, like action-wise. The matchups are really good matchups. Like there's not a single matchup I'm not intrigued by. So that, that sense, it's really fun. It should be action. I just, to the I don't want to go too far down this rant, but what I'll say this is the UFC has talked this up so much that I really feel like they've set themselves up to disappoint, because I don't know what possibly, and I really hope I'm wrong. Like, I hope it's this most amazing thing, and it sounds like it'll be something really cool if you're in the arena. The problem is 99.99% of the viewers won't be in the arena. I'm expecting it's just going to be another thing for us at home. So when you talk about how insane this is, one time ever, they're only going to give us 10 fights because, they're going to do something spectacular. And I really think it's like when you watch a movie and you get told by your friends, like, oh, this is the most amazing movie ever. When you watch it, it's going to blow your mind. Then you watch it and you're like, yeah, it's all right. It's pretty good. But because you set such a high standard, I kind of despise. Like, all right, ready? People are going to hate on me for this. I think The Departed is overrated. Like, so many people talk to me like how amazing The Departed was going to be. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, it's all right. Like, it's a decent movie, but I was like, it's just okay to me. Like, there's too many like twists and turns. I was like the pretty predictable twists and turns. And anyways, that's kind of gonna feel about this card. That's like
did the Boston accents bother you? Like, I've heard from some people from New England that like the some of the accents were bad enough that it like took them out of moments. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody around here, like, we all have accents, but no one has an accent like that bad. Like, no one says like, I parked my car. But anyways, that said, I think the main event is going to intrigue me so much that'll really kind of like get me excited.
Yeah, the main event is about as high level a fight as you can make in the sport today that's not a champ versus champ fight. I mean, it is a champ that's shown himself to be pretty dominant so far against a guy that's on a 10-fight win streak and has been the most overdue guy for a title shot in this division in the UFC for about 2 years running now. So yeah, I absolutely love that one. I don't mind that it's a 10-fight card. You and I think probably especially me, I'm that kind of like spoiled, jaded fan that
sure
I will complain about too much MMA, but yeah, if we got a 14 or 15 fight card and I can point to 4 fights that should probably be on Dana White's Contender Series instead, I'm good to complain because I've got to buckle down and watch the whole thing and be ready to talk about it. Here, like you said, just 10 fights, none of them are bad, and most of them are very competitive. Like, we'll talk a little bit about the betting lines as we go along. There are a couple of blowout lines, but for the most part, I think this is pretty competitively put together, especially considering that the UFC put it together with an eye towards matching Mexicans or Mexican Americans with non-Mexicans,
yeah, which is kind of probably why I've kind of only given it a B. Not that I'm like against that, but I feel like I'm not saying anything negative about Hispanics and Mexicans, so I want to be very clear before you get. But there's a gimmick to it, like you're having a gimmick. But you kind of feel like I have 2 gimmicks going on at the same time. It's not necessary.
2 gimmicks at the same time is the perfect way to describe this. Yeah, because
like you have the spirit gimmick, and then you have the Hispanic, Mexican pride, all that gimmick. Like, why can't they just be 2 separate nights?
Exactly. Like, if you were going to do a Noche UFC card like this, why not stick it in Mexico?
Exactly. Exactly. But anyways,
I am looking forward to the spectacle a bit. I'm not one of those guys that's like, all I care is about the product that's actually in the cage. Like, I'm one of the people that thinks the UFC should bring back Pride style ramps and fireworks from time to time. I enjoy the spectacle.
Me too. So do I.
Yeah. So I'm not.
We're not the ones saying, "Oh my God, Face the Pain was so terrible." Oh, if I hear that song again, I'll pull my ears off my head and shit. Like, oh, look how hipster I am that I pretend that I hate all this stuff. Oh, when guys talk trash to each other, it's so terrible. Like, shut the fuck up.
It's. I have nothing to add to that, except a full and enthusiastic cosign. Yeah. Any general
just for the record,
Yeah.
Just for the record, I kind of added multiple people into one, so I wasn't telling one specific person to go fuck off because, just for the record, the guy had no beef with it.
Any other general thoughts about the card before we jump into the prelims?
No, let's do it.
First up at Noche UFC is a bantamweight contest between Raul Rosas Jr. and Aori Qileng. Rosas, the 19-year-old for about another month, American, is 9-1 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's on a 2-fight win streak. Since taking his first career loss last April against Christian Rodriguez, he has put together back-to-back wins inside the distance against Terrence Mitchell and Ricky Turcios. The most recent of those, the Turcios fight, was back in June at UFC on ESPN, Cannonier versus Imavov. So he's looking to stretch it into 3 straight, celebrate an early 20th birthday, bid goodbye to his teens, and continue to certify himself one of the top young prospects in the promotion against Aori Qileng. 31-year-old Chinese fighter is 25-11 with 1 no contest overall. He is 3-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. That lone no contest was in his last appearance. He was at UFC Fight Night Hermanson versus Pfeiffer back in February, where he was frankly getting the worst of a matchup with Daniel Marcos before a bizarre second round in which he absorbed 2 really bad groin shots. He couldn't continue, fight over, no contest. So he hasn't racked up a win since last October when he took a unanimous decision over Johnny Munoz. He's looking to get back in the win column. He is not favored to do so, to say the least. As I alluded to off the top, this card is full of very close betting lines. This is not one of them, as Rosas Jr. is minus 700, Aori Qileng plus 500. I don't think Aori Qileng would have been cut by the UFC if the Marcos fight had gone on and he had lost as it looked like he was going to. I mean, Marcos was putting it on him pretty good. But this feels like a setup fight for Raul Rosas Jr. This 135 might be the deepest division in the UFC right now. This was not a short notice matchup. The UFC had plenty of people to choose from to fight Rosas that were not going to be 7-1 underdogs against him. I'm okay with it. Again, part of the theme of this is it's Noche UFC. It wouldn't be a very festive Noche if 2/3 of the Mexicans or Mexican Americans lost. But yeah, I think Aori Qileng's going to get slaughtered here. He's a fairly well-rounded fighter, but Rosas is bigger, much younger, more athletic. While Rosas Jr.'s striking is still a work in progress, he throws good volume, uses his reach pretty well, and has good natural power. And the disparity on the ground is going to be ridiculous. I think Raul Rosas Jr. has a pretty easy night of work here. I think this is the kind of situation where he can test his luck on the feet because Aori Qileng he is a hard hitter. He's got plenty of knockouts and TKOs on his record, but very few of them were kind of one-shot, kill shot things. It usually takes him an accumulation of damage, and Rosas Jr. that big old chin of his has been pretty bulletproof so far. So I expect Rosas Jr. to, try to stretch things out on the feet a little bit, continue to show his developments there. But I think he'll be able to get Aori Qileng down whenever he wants to. And from there, I think it's going to be over quickly. I think he pounds on him a little bit, advances position, probably moves him out, beats him up a little bit. Aori Qileng turns his back. Rosas Jr. takes the back, chokes him out. I'm going to say it happens, first half of the second round. But if this thing were over in the first round, I'm not too surprised.
So Ben, when you make a mistake, just saying you're sorry is not enough. You kind of have to right the wrong. So you really
Absolutely.
You really disappointed our listeners. So Ben, you got to give the people what they want. So Ben, can I get a shoo-wee-wee?
Oh, shoo-wee-wee! I'm so embarrassed right now. I feel so bad about myself.
I love that I had to ask you to do it. I just willfully did it. Dude, Rosas is 19.
It's insane.
I really don't think he gets enough credit for that. The kid is 19. Think about it. When you go off to like so many athletes, star athletes, when they go off to college, they take that whole first year to redshirt and get ready. And like at wrestling, they redshirt so many. Like a guy on our team that went to Cornell, he's an incredible athlete, but he's redshirt in the first year. They actually call it gray shirt and Ivy League. You get my point. I don't know if it's winning in the UFC that really impresses me at his age more than it's the mentality. Like the dude is so mentally. The guy's like 3-1 in the UFC. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he loses one fight when it was 18 years old, and everyone's, oh, he sucks. He's not going to be good. And then he's looked incredibly good ever since. And again, I said this last time when I gave him credit for being young. Don't at me with the guys at war could be 18 years old. Like, all right, we're talking about two different things. Like obviously not comparison, but
before you say that, keep in mind that Keith has a pro MMA record and is a veteran. He gets it.
Both.
Just move on. Like,
and most of our listeners like that, but just I don't want that one idiot to say something like that. The thing is, the guy keeps getting better. I mean, he showed in his last fight. He showed some boxing in his last fight, which is really good. Now, slow down. I'm not saying he's Max Holloway, but he can keep improving, and I expect to see even more from him than he was in his last fight. He's already fighting out of both stances. He needs to clean it up a little bit though. He's a little wild. He can swing wildly, but he's got good volume. He's already showed power. And the crazy thing is, like, the guy's probably like a decade away from his power years. So I can't imagine what he's going to be doing when he's like, 28, 29, 30. Yeah. He throws a lot of kicks. And he'll throw some like flying attacks, Superman punches, and knees like that, which I've never been too crazy about. He's not a bad wrestler, though he wasn't able to get Christian Rodriguez down. But when he does get the fight to the ground, he's got a strong grappling game. I mean, he's a very good grappler. Good BJJ, great back takes. He is a submission artist. Here he has 6 subs on his record. I mean, 2 already in the UFC. He hit a Sula, almost hit a Sula stretch. Or he had it, but he didn't finish it in the UFC. He will chase submissions that isn't there and lose position. That's something he needs to clean up. But if he doesn't look for submissions, he batters guys with ground and pound. He isn't the best defensive wrestler, and we saw him kind of slow down against Christian Rodriguez, but his cardio has looked way better since. Qileng, like, I think I'm a little higher on him than you are. He's big for the weight class. He's long and lengthy. He's a decent striker. But he doesn't use his length, he which should be his best thing. He stands kind of directly in front of his opponent. He loves to brawl. He is accurate, and he has power. I mean, I go back to the Johnny Budos fight. He hurt him a bunch of times in that fight. He really steps into his shots. He loves to unload uppercuts and hooks inside. I go back to Jeff Molina, a good fight. He hurt him. He's got a really good kicking game, kicks everywhere. He will close the distance with a flying knee. He can wrestle a little bit. I mean, he took Molina down. He did well to grind Johnny Munoz, who was a grappler. He grinded him in the clinch. He's not the best defensive wrestler, but to his credit, he did stuff some takedowns against Cody Durden, though Durden took him down like 5 times. If he ends up on top, he's got good ground and pound. I mean, he hurt Cameron Else with some ground and pound, and he can go hard for all 15 minutes. So I think this line is insane. Like I said, I'm probably I don't think Qileng is future contender, but I think he's a solid test. I do think this is a step up. It continues to take a step up for Rojas. Qileng's pretty well rounded. If you're like this avid gambler, to me, it's worth throwing a little bit on him just because of the odds. That said, I can't completely grasp who Rojas is as a fighter, and I mean that in the sense that he's 19. Like he could be a massively different, improved fighter in his next fight, and that's what I'm betting on, and that's what obviously Vegas is betting on. Because I think if you took out his name and you took out his age and like gimmick and the hoopla around him, and you just inserted like a contender series guy with the same exact results, I don't think he'd be this big. He'd probably be a favorite over Qileng, but he wouldn't be. What'd you say? Like
minus 700.
700. I say he shows that he has cardio. I think that's going to be the one thing that I really am watching for. I think he gets this fight. Yeah, I think this fight goes deeper, goes in the third round, and I think Rojas subs him in the third round. Give me Rojas by third round submission.
All right.
Hey, how about this? Why is this fight first?
I don't know. And it's a funny thing because this card being just 10 fights, it's almost a throwback because if you look at the bout order on the UFC's own website, there is one early prelim and it's this. And it reminds me when there'd be like a Facebook prelim and then some Fox prelims and then like the pay-per-view card. You'd have to go to like 3 different sources for your fights. This one is listed as a Fight Pass prelim, and then there's the 4 fight regular undercard and then the 5 fight pay-per-view card. It's an interesting one. Bit of a throwback.
I wonder if they're putting this first just so they can like fill the arena and I mean I don't know, but I'm looking at the card right now. I put him 4th on the top. I mean, I know there's guys that are more deserving of higher profile fights right now, but
it's right up there with Zellhuber versus Ribovics, which is 4th from the top.
Yeah. But I'm saying just name value and everything. Like it's like good.
No, I agree with you because Zellhuber might actually have just as good an upside as Rosas Jr., but he's not quite as young. Yeah. So he doesn't get quite the same shine. I'm totally with you on that.
But first, so I would throw this on the main card, and I would throw Aldana Dumont just because of their ranking and division on the main card. But that's just me.
That's your job, putting these fights in order. Next up at UFC 306 is a men's flyweight contest between Edgar Chairez and Josh Van. Chairez, the 28-year-old Mexican, is 11-5 with 1 no contest. Overall, he is 1-1 with 1 no contest. Since joining the UFC as a veteran of Dana White's Contender Series, he fought on the 6th season, actually lost. He went back and fought a couple different places before getting the call to the UFC last summer. He debuted unsuccessfully against Tatsuro Taira. Since then, he has back-to-back fights against Daniel Da Silva, Daniel Lacerda. The first one ended in a no contest due to a controversial premature stoppage. He finally put that storyline to rest in February at UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Royval 2, triangling Da Silva and giving him his walking papers from the UFC. So he's looking for his second UFC win here. He had been scheduled to take on Kevin Borjas. Borjas fell off the card about 10 days out from Fight Night, and in steps Josh Van. 22-year-old Burmese American by way of Houston is 10-2 overall. He is 3-1 since joining the UFC as the former Fury FC flyweight champ. He actually lost his last time out, his first UFC loss. He got knocked out early in the 3rd round by Charles Johnson back in July at UFC on ESPN, Namajunas versus Cortez. He's looking to get back on track here. He is favored to do so. He's minus 210, while Chairez is plus 180. Poor Edgar Chairez. He had been scheduled to fight Kevin Borjas. I believe he was a pretty comfortable favorite. He gets a short notice opponent who all of a sudden is a 2-1 favorite against him. Keith? Josh Van, not quite as young as Raul Rosas Jr., but one of the younger guys in the UFC, steps in here and tries to get back in the win column. Who gets it done?
I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, this guy's so good. He's 22. And I'm like, this poor guy, he's not going to get any credit because of Rojas. But seriously, even 22, I mean, that's really impressive. I like Van. The he's a really good athlete. My one issue is that he's this Marlon Vera type slow starter. I mean, it's been 4 fights in a row where he's lost the first round. But to his credit, he's a builder. By the third round, he's attacking really good volume. He's constantly taking the ground and forces opponents on their back foot. Much better moving forward than he is, being pressured back. He wants to be the one. He wants to be the bull. He's a good striker. He's technically sound. He sets up his shots really well with feints, fast hands. A nice crisp jab. He's accurate. Nice pop in his shots. I love that he targets the body. Go back to that Bojas fight. It was some of the best body punching I've seen. And then he did the same thing to Felipe Bunes and their fight. Throws a lot of kicks. I like his teep kicks, though he will throw some naked kicks. We talk about body shots. His step in knee is one of my favorite things. Dude can wrestle a little bit. He's got some good entries. He's hard to take down, strong takedown defense. Even if you take him down, he'll pop right back up. I always go back to the Zuma Gula fight. He was getting taken on, just popping right back up. He's got good ground pound. He has 2 submission wins. The one concern I have though is he's a slow starter. Is it going to be even worse, being that he just got knocked out in his last fight against Charles Johnson? Though to his credit, that loss, as age. Not that it's.
Charles Johnson's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Charles Johnson's on a roll. The dude's really good. Chairez, he's not a bad, guy either. I like what I see him. A good striker, good kickboxing style, good footwork. I like that he avoids strikes, a lot of L stepping, very boxing style with that. He has to move his whole body because he doesn't move specifically his head. He doesn't move his head enough, but he works behind a good jab. He throws kicks to all areas of the body. He will throw some naked leg kicks, which is concerning. He likes to grapple. He's not this strong wrestler, but if he gets the fight to the ground, he's a good grappler. He's got 7 subs on his record. He just subbed Daniel Lacerda in his last fight. He's got good submission defense himself. I am worried about Van with that slow starting. His lack of urgency really bothers me, but I love everything else. That said, it bothers me even more taking this fight on short notice. And yeah, it sucks for Chairez to be a favorite, to suddenly be a sizable underdog. But if you're gonna beat Van, this is probably the advantage. Get him on short notice. That said, I still think Van could be a contender one day. I don't think, based on his age, I don't think it's crazy to say he could possibly be a champion one day. I like Chairez, but I'm all over Van here, even on the short notice. I say he dominates. I say he gets a late TKO. Give me Van by 3rd round TKO.
Yeah, I like the pick there. I've said similar things about a few fighters, and I'll throw this out about Edgar Chairez. After 3 fights in the UFC, all we really know about him is that he's not as good as Tatsuro Taira, and he's better than Daniel Lacerda. And that's about as wide as the range gets, because Taira, a lot of people are picking him as a future champ in this division. Yeah. And Daniel Lacerda, he was demonstrably the worst guy in the division. He lost basically 5 straight fights, including that no contest.
So to sum that up, it's he's not as good as Taira. He's better than Lacerda. So it's pretty much he fits in the range of every other flyweight in the division. Yeah,
there are maybe 2 or 3 flyweights that don't fit in that range. People that I am pretty sure are better than Taira, and that's it. Van, he's still a work in progress. He has rare physical tools. He has a kind of gameness and meanness to him that's kind of uncoachable. Fighters either have it or they don't. I don't know if you watched last night's UFC Vegas 97, but Dane and I in the recap were talking a little bit about Steve Garcia, and where he fought out of a submission, and he was so mean and ruthless once he got out. That kind of attitude is something that fighters either have it or they don't. Van has it. I agree with you that his slow start is the thing that's probably going to cost him a loss or 2 along the way to wherever his top ceiling is. And I agree with you. He looks like a future contender. For all we know, as a guy that's not even 23 for a couple more weeks, he might be a future champ. But, his biggest problem so far is that he has basically given away the first round of all of his fights in the UFC so far. I'm 100% with you on that. He still retains a little bit of his fighting in local Houston shows wildness, where he could just come out, blast a dude with a flying knee whenever he felt like it. And, you know, that's not going to work as he keeps going up the ranks. But as it is, I mean, I liked your comparison. I also see a little bit of Manel Kopp in him. If if somebody out there was a better and they were upset minded, I do agree that, hey, if Edgar Chairez is going to pop up and take down a name or grab a win that's going to age really well for him over the next 5 years, now would be the time to do it. You know, against a guy that's a little iffy in the first round in Van and might not have as much third round juice as we're used to because of the short notice. But that's the outside chance. I'm with you here. I think Van is better probably everywhere than Chairez, more of a finisher. He might have to overcome his usual kind of slow start, but I think once he gets in gear, he's going to blow Chairez out. I believe you called for a third round TKO. I see no reason to be different, just to be different. Make that two of us for Josh Van by a late stoppage with strikes. We head now to the strawweight division for a clash between Yazmin Jauregui and Ketlen Souza. Jauregui, the 25-year-old Mexican, is 11-1 overall. She is 3-1 since joining the UFC out of Combate Global. She is coming into this fight off a win. She took a unanimous decision over Sam Hughes at UFC, the same Moreno versus Royval 2 fight night back in February that half the fighters on this card fought on. That allowed her to bounce back from her first career loss, a 20-second knockout at the hands of Denise Gomez. She will look to continue to put that loss in the rear view against Souza. 30-year-old Brazilian is 14-4 overall. She's 1-1 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Invicta flyweight champ. She debuted and got knee-barred quickly by Karine Silva last June, came back this April against Marnik Mann and took a unanimous decision. So she's looking for her second win in a row as well. She is not favored to get it, to say the least. I'll go ahead and spoil this for you, Keith. Outside of Raul Rosas Jr. and Yazmin Jauregui, there's not a single fight on this card, I don't think, with a greater than 2-1 favorite. But Souza is, or Jauregui is way out there. She's minus 600. Souza plus 425. I get it. I'm high on Yazmin Jauregui as an up and comer. I think you were even on her before I was, and I've had to come along. She's not gonna. I mean, there's not much you can say about getting lamped in 20 seconds by Denise Gomez, but Denise Gomez is going to do that to a few people before it's all said and done. I'm not saying that Denise Gomez is going to be the next Jessica Andrade, but she's kind of slotting in as, now that Andrade appears to maybe be on her way out, she's the next scary muscle chick that is going to just knock some women out of their sneakers in the octagon. Outside of that, she's been very impressive. And this feels like a bit of a showcase matchup. I'm not hugely I'm not hugely high on Souza. Like, she's her best wins in Invicta, a lot of them were at flyweight, where, I mean, she was definitely kind of undersized and stocky. In the UFC, it's not quite the comparison I made for Edgar Chairez, but if all we know is that you're worse than Karine Silva and better than Marnik Mann, that is a wide range, and getting a pretty one-sided decision over Marnik Mann did not raise her stock really for me. Like, Mann was probably the lowest level woman in the whole division, and she gave Souza a relatively competitive fight for 3 rounds. Here, I think Jauregui's speed, her hand speed, power, straight punches, combination punching, I think it's just going to be too much for Ketlen Souza. Souza is a striker by preference herself, but I don't think she's nearly as quick or technical. I don't think her footwork is as good. I don't think her defense is good. I think this will be a fun fight for as long as it lasts, but I think Jauregui is going to get the better of most of these exchanges, start rolling downhill pretty quickly. Give me Yazmin Jauregui by second round knockout after a first round where, I mean, she probably puts it on Souza pretty badly.
Yeah, I mean, Jauregui looks really good. She's a great athlete, pressure striker. I love her output. Very fast hands, accurate. I mean, she's attacking with like 4 to 7 punch combinations. It's why you're comparing her to Jessica Andrade. I'm comparing her to Joanna Jacek when she was in
no, I was comparing
you know Souza.
Denise Gomez, who knocked her out.
Gomez, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was rearranging my notes. So the one thing about her, because she throws some big shots, she gets hit. She'll get hit because she throws such big ones. But a lot of times she'll land one of these big combinations and get out because she moves really well. She's got good footwork. She avoids a lot of shots by changing angles and L stepping. She has, your classic high guard defense. So it's hard to get, anything around her. Quick hands, accurate. I like that she can strike while backing up, which is really impressive. She has really good power. I mean, she's got 7 TKOs already, and she's only 25. And it's that Joanna Jacek killer instinct. Like she sees the open, she's going for it. Good calf kicks, though she'll throw some naked calf kicks. Fast high kick, some good teep kicks up the middle, mixes punches and kicks together well. She keeps her chin high in the air, which is a little worried. She's been blasting in the past, which is concerning. In the grappling area, she can get in the clinch. She's more likely to do damage than get a takedown. She's not much of an offensive wrestler. And defensively, she's more of like a sprawl and brawl style. If she's taken down, she does well get back to her feet. And if she ends up on top, she's got good ground and pound. Souza, I think I'm a little higher in Souza, but yeah, I mean, there's a reason why she's this big of an underdog. She's a short and stocky fighter of the division. She's a boxer with pretty good footwork. She tries to move a lot and get her opponents to chase her. She's a counter striker that has no head movement, but she does keep her hands a little wide, which is concerning. If she gets in the range, she unloads big winging power shots. She does have some good power. She likes to attack the calves with kicks. She gets inside and she looks for elbows. She busted up Christina Williams with a beautiful elbow inside. Though I've said it before, I thought Christina Williams won that fight. She will look for takedowns, but she's hardly a wrestler, and she's a bad defensive wrestler and a bad get-up game. I mean, she was taken down so quickly by Karine Silva. She has showed cardio as being a strength. She's gone 25 minutes before, so going 15 minutes hard shouldn't be an issue. I think she's tough, but I mean, Jauregui I think she's something special. I think she smashes Souza. I mean, give me Jauregui to piece her up, to land some big shots. And I say she finishes it. I'll say she doesn't. I'm going to say she doesn't late in the first round. Give me Jauregui by first round TKO.
Next up at Noche UFC are the lightweights as Manuel Torres and Ignacio Bahamondes square off. Torres, the 29-year-old Mexican, is 15-2 overall. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought most recently, again, back in February at UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Royval 2, tapping out Chris Duncan in the first round with a rear naked choke. He will look to make it 4 in a row and hopefully keep his streak of first-round finishes alive against Bahamondes. 27-year-old Chilean, 15-5 overall, 4-2 since joining the UFC out of season 4 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's coming in off a win. He put away Christos Yagos with a highlight reel head kick back in April at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Curtis. That allowed him to bounce back from a loss to Ludovic Klein just a little over a year ago. Odds on this one, as I alluded to earlier, pretty close. Your favorite is minus 120. Your underdog, even money, plus 100. Who are they, Keith?
Bahamondes is his favorite.
You're correct. Bahamondes minus 120, Torres plus 100. Here's a good thing about being a lightweight in the UFC. if you're a heavyweight in the UFC or even a light heavyweight and you debut with a first round knockout on the Contender Series and first round finishes in your first 3 UFC fights, if you're a heavyweight, you're probably on a main card in your next fight fighting Andrei Arlovsky. Like there's no hiding. It's possible to go 3-0 with 3 first round finishes quietly in a division as deep as lightweight, especially if, like Manuel Torres, you're kind of fighting once a year because of some injuries. That's the downside of how impressive Torres' run has been so far, and it's part of what's allowed him to fly under the radar. He's not getting as much shine as some other fighters that have accomplished similar things. I think partly because he's in a crowded division, partly because he's just fighting once a year. But Torres is a guy I kind of did one of the deeper dives on for this card, just because I was like, why don't I have a better handle on this guy's game considering what he's done? He's now 29. That's not great. I mean, when he fought on the Contender Series, I think he was 26, and he caught my attention then because he thrashed Colton England, and Colton England is a Houston guy. He's one of those guys that's been hanging around as like a fringe UFC level talent for a couple of years now, and he is himself a striker by preference, and Torres crushed him. Torres is good, man. Like, going back, his 2 career losses are so bizarre, it almost looks like they happened to another fighter. And if he was Russian, he'd probably be writing into Sherdog claiming that it was another fighter. You go back, his only 2 career losses.
I mean, how many Manuel Torres are there? I mean, there's probably a shitload.
I'm Manuel Normaga Torres, and that was my cousin who lost those fights. No, if you look back at his 2 losses, they're both like leg lock submission losses within a minute and a half. They're both available on video. You can find them. They're terrible. He looks terrible in them. He just doesn't look like he knows the first thing to do when someone's trying to leg lock on him. The guys that beat him are not that good. And all I can do is kind of throw my hands up and go, I don't know what happened to that guy, because he's not the one that we see fighting in the UFC right now. The guy we see fighting in the UFC right now is pretty well-rounded. He's not a great offensive wrestler. Like, he has a ton of submissions, but most of them are just fights that ended up on the ground from collisions, scrambles, people shooting on him when he hurt him on the feet. But, well-rounded, hard hitter, like just he has pretty crisp boxing, some decent kicks that I think he sometimes doesn't use enough. I think he's a real solid fighter. And now he's running into a guy in Bahamondes that everything except making weight, he seems to be the truth. At just 27, I still think this guy might end up at 170 for some of his career. But Bahamondes is a huge guy. He's super long, super rangy. For the most part, uses his range well. He's pretty good at using outside weapons on people, but I mean, just look no further than him head kicking Christos Yagos, but has good weapons for people to try to crash the pocket against him. Like, I on some level, he has figured out that he has reach on most of his opponents. Most of them are going to try to get inside, and he's developed good weapons to deal with it, like good knees and elbows inside, good short punches. He slapped a great Bravo choke on Rong Zhu when Rong came kind of crashing in and looking to take him down. I kind of hate that one of these guys has to lose. I'm leaning towards Bahamondes as the slight favorite here, but this one is very deservedly almost a pick 'em. Give me Bahamondes to win 2 rounds out of 3 in a fight that takes place mostly on the feet and is kind of a low-key banger. I think these are 2 diverse, confident kickboxers, both of whom have good power, but Bahamondes being just a little bit younger, a little bit bigger, and kind of healthier and more consistently in the cage over the last couple of years will probably make the difference. Yeah, give me Bahamondes by decision.
Yeah, this fight is exactly what I was talking about when I said earlier that there's some bangers on this card. This one, I mean, two really good guys. I like what you said about it. I don't want to see either guy lose. Like I agree. That said, the guy who wins, I mean, they'll really be taking a huge step up because I mean they beat a really underrated good guy. I like that the line is close. Bahamondes, I mean, the guy's a really good athlete, long and lengthy, a very good striker, technical, can fight out both stances. One thing he does that he uses range, he loves to grab hands, uses his opponent's hands, which and kind of move them and then strike with the other one, which I like. Good volume, constantly marching down his foe. He wants to be able to move him forward because he hates when he's pressured back. When he stays technical, he's really sharp striker, bit of a sniper. The problem is he doesn't mind a brawl, which doesn't benefit him to keep his range. When he's in that, he can kind of overthrow his shots. He'll throw a lot of winging overhands. When he's technical, he's got a lot of variety. He can go to the body, he can go upstairs, he can go power shots. I like that he goes to the body. He's got good power. I love his stepping knees. He's got a very good kicking game, teep kicks. He likes a lot of inside leg kicks. He crushed Christos Giagos with a high kick. He doesn't wrestle much, offensively, but defensively, he's got this like tall man's defense, which makes him hard to take down. If taken down, he's not bad on the ground. I mean, he swept Rongju when he was taken down. He'll toss up subs and triangles and arm bars. He's good at getting those positions. He's a little bit of a specialist when it comes to like head attacks, guillotines, darce chokes, those long arms. I mean, he finished Rongju with a darce choke, and despite being really big and cutting weight, he has the cardio to go 5 rounds. We've seen that. Manuel Torres, also a long and lengthy striker, also a very good striker. He's got quick hands, works behind a nice jab. He does have good power. I like his kicks. He'll throw teep kicks to keep his distance. He'll toss up a high kick. Defensively, he stands a little tall for my liking. Even though he quickly beat Chris Duncan, he actually was briefly stung in that fight. He's a good grappler, but he's a weak offensive wrestler. When he gets to fight the ground, it's usually not entries. It's like a body lock, but he's got good he's a good grappler. Like he's got good back takes. He's got 7 subs. I mean, he just subs Chris Duncan in his last fight. I'm with you, man. I like both guys a lot. I think Bahamondes is probably better than Torres everywhere. And I don't mean that. I mean, say if I give one guy a A-, I give the other guy a B+. I don't know where Torres is better than him. So I think he gets the better of the exchange on the feet. He's got some good power. You know what? I'm gonna say put some away. Give me Bahamondes by second round TKO.
We head next to the women's bantamweight division as Irene Aldana takes on Norma Dumont. Aldana, the 36-year-old Mexican, is 15-7 overall. She's 8-5 since joining the UFC out of Invicta Fighting Championships. She's coming into this fight off a win. She fought most recently at UFC 296 last December, where she took a unanimous decision over Carl Rosa. That allowed her to bounce back from her, frankly, disastrous challenge to Amanda Nunes last June. So she's looking to put that ugly performance even further in the rear view, continue to certify herself a factor in the bantamweight title picture going forward against a woman who will be looking to do the same in Dumont. 33-year-old Brazilian is 11-2 overall. She's 7-2 in the UFC. That's the good news. The bad news, or the less great news, is that she's 1-0 at bantamweight. She's fought primarily at featherweight, a couple times at featherweight plus, either through her own fault or her opponent's fault. But she fought Jermaine Durandamy back in April at UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Curtis, made weight, beat Durandamy, and all of a sudden, she is a ranked bantamweight contender. Here, she's going to look to take another step forward. Your favorite, Keith, is -130. Your underdog +110. Who are they?
That's a really good question. I have no idea. Aldana?
You're correct. Keith is 2 for 2 so far for those keeping score at home. And the only stat that really matters.
Better than my weekend fantasy football, I'll tell you that. But hey, how about my New England Patriots?
Hey, how are they?
Yeah, want to know.
Hey, I haven't even looked. I've been dude. Okay, side rant. NFL's own fantasy league, like their software, their servers suck so bad. Like since Thursday, there have been millions of people that have been unable to log on. I've been trying to log on since yesterday afternoon. I just keep getting server errors. And so my team is getting thrashed this week because I literally don't have a kicker or a defense.
In fairness, though, the NFL is a very small company, so I don't know if they can afford like a big website. Like not everyone can have a website like SureDog.
Right. You know, I mean,
obviously SureDog has way more money. That's why me and you make more than these announcers who call football.
Yeah, we make more than like Joe Buck and of course.
That Tom Brady guy ain't making what we're making.
Yeah, like SureDog's website hosting costs several $100s a year. You can't just expect the National Football League to go digging in their couch cushions and find enough money to make shit fucking work. Oh, anyway, thank you. I feel much better now. Man, I'm going to flip this one to you. I mean, bantamweight being what it is, it's not out of the realm of possibility that this is a title eliminator. Bantamweight is just desperate for someone who can make weight and win 2 fights in a row. Who gets it done here?
I mean, especially, well, I shouldn't say that because nobody wins at 145, but like with the low streak she's on, you could make the argument. And this is an intriguing one. Like I said, if I was setting the lineup based on, and rankings matter a lot to me in the sense of, which is ironic considering I've been blasted before for talking about the SureDog rankings and not know who's in it, even though I vote on it. But I mean, like, if you're close to the title, like I don't think you should, if you have a number next to your name, you probably shouldn't be fighting on the prelims and people who don't have numbers next to the name on the main card. But back to this. This is. I mean, both girls are right there. Aldana, she's a pressure striker that constantly moving forward and stalking her foe. The issue is she wants to be a pressure fighter. She still needs to learn how to cut off the cage. I always go back to the Holly Holm fight where she was really chasing Holly Holm and could never catch up to her because of that. When she's in a striking battle, she's a good kickboxer. I mean, she's got that classic high guard defense, good output. She's accurate striking, nice long strikes down the pipe. She's got that, like when she gets inside, she got that legendary left hook. When she's in that pocket, which is ironic considering she's a good rangy distance striker. I like that she works the body. The biggest issue is she lacks head movement. She backs straight up. She's very hittable. She has a good kicking game. She uses those long lanes to keep her distance. But because of her long legs, it kind of also leaves her open to be kicked. I mean, go back to the Kyle Hossa fight. I mean, she was kicked like 2 billion times in that fight. She's not much of an offensive wrestler, and she's a weaker defense wrestler. I mean, Holly Holm and Macy Sasson took her down a lot. Amanda Nunes make it look like a takedown dummy. I mean, you got 2 legendary fighters, Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm, and Macy Sasson is on a nice little streak herself. So, not bad. Not bad how it happened. And then she had beaten Chasson anyways. So she does have 3 subs on her record. She does have good cardio. Like she'll go hard the entire fight. Norma Dumont, she's a good striker, technically sound, constantly switching stances, kind of get her opponents guessing. She's a good counter striker. She's got fast hands. I like her jab. It's a bit of like a power jab. She follows up with nice combos. I like her fade back right hand from the orthodox stance. She has some good power. I love that she goes to the body. She's got a good kicking game too. One of the few fighters on the roster that is defensive minding in her striking. I love that she parries punches, which is so few MMA fighters do. She uses her strength in the clinch. She'll get in there. She has no issue grinding her opponent there. She also wrestle there. She likes some body lock takedowns, but she has outside entries too. She got a lot of takedowns in her UFC career. I mean, she took down Ashley Evan Smith, Felicia Spencer, Aspen Ladd, Jermaine Durandamy. I mean, the only fight that I noted where her wrestling looked bad was against Macy Chiasson. But based on her track record, I think that speaks more about Chiasson than it does about Norma Dumont. If she's on top, she's got good control, and she has no problem stalling on top. She'll lay in prey. She laid in prey against Jermaine Durandamy, which is not a bad strategy when you're fighting Jermaine Durandamy. When she lets her hands go on the ground, though, she's got good ground and pound. She does struggle a little bit if you put her on the bottom. I like both fighters. I can see why the line is so close. Like I've gone back and forth a little bit myself. Like I said, I don't think many people would be confident in their pick. I am leaning Dumont. Like Aldana is a way better athlete. She has the better overall tools, especially the raw tools. She has the more tools to finish. If there's a finish, then it's Aldana caught her with a big shot. The thing is, Dumont is smart. She really knows her limitations, and she does really well to get the fight where she needs it to be to win. Whether it's battle and clinch, whether it's a distance kickboxing, whether it's I need to wrestle a lot. I expect her to have watched that Hossa fight and kick Aldana's legs a lot when they're at distance. When she's able to close the distance at all, I expect her to get takedowns and look to wrestle a lot. I expect to get the fight to the ground often, and I think that gives Dumont a decision.
There you go. I mean, this is an angle that I've talked about for not as long as Norma Dumont has been in the UFC, but as long as Norma Dumont's been winning fights, because it took a minute for us to realize that she was going to actually be a pretty good fighter, since she was, brought in as a sacrificial lamb way once upon a time. But I've used the example of Norma Dumont before as the difference between what a fighter wants to do and is trained to do versus what they actually do in the cage. She lists herself as a Wushu Sanda fighter. She competed in Wushu Sanda. She stands like one, but as soon as the bullets start flying, she is good at grinding, taking her opponent down, doing work from top position. Apparently, the low center of gravity that makes her such a hit with the Shillan and Duffy crowd has carried over to bantamweight. But yeah, there's not much I can add to what you've said there. Like, to me, the difference is that Dumont is a capable and, more importantly, willing offensive wrestler and offensive grappler. Aldana is one of the better kickboxers in the division, even if she's come up short against the very best of the best kickboxing opponents, people like Nunes and Holm. But while they, Dumont and Aldana could give us an entertaining kickboxing battle, Dumont has that safety valve where I think she can take Aldana down, do enough work at least not to get stood up, do some damage, put Aldana in peril, win rounds that way. So I'm with you here. Give me Dumont by decision in the mild upset. And there is your first unanimous Shillan and Duffy upset pick of Noche UFC. Next up at UFC 306, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the main card opener is a men's flyweight clash between Ronaldo Rodriguez and Ode Osbourne. Rodriguez, the 25-year-old Mexican, is 16-2 overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC as a veteran of Season 4 of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on the Contender Series just a little over 4 years ago, lost, went back to Mexico, won 5 straight fights, and I believe even a title in Lux Fight League, which is one of Mexico's better promotions, if not the best one. Got the call up at, of course, UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Royval 2, where he tapped out Denise Bondar with a second-round buzzer-beating rear naked choke. So he will look to build on the momentum of that debut win against Osbourne. 32-year-old Jamaican-American by way of Wisconsin is 12-7 with 1 no contest overall. He's 4-5 in the UFC, and he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Dating back a little over a year, he has back-to-back submission losses to Asu Almabayev and Jafel Filio. So Osbourne potentially fighting for his job here, definitely not wanting to lose 3 straight in the UFC. The line, another close one. Your favorite is -130. Your underdog +110. Who are they, Keith?
Osbourne the favorite?
Your perfect record is gone for the night as Rodriguez is -130, Osbourne +110, just barely in the plus money. Rodriguez is an interesting one because he didn't look great on the Contender Series. Like, he dropped a unanimous decision. It was deservedly so. Like, he lost that fight, and it was against a kind of middling guy in Jerome Rivera. He looked great at Lux Fight League over the last couple years as he was sort of building his way back to the UFC. But all of those fights were at bantamweight. Lux Fight League doesn't even have a flyweight division. So he fought on the Contender Series at flyweight. He was a bantamweight for basically 4 full years, came back to the UFC at flyweight again, looked pretty good this time against Denise Bondar, and he's going to keep it going at flyweight. He's a big guy for flyweight, like tall for the division. Again, 5'7", 5'8", has some muscle on his frame. And he won't be as tall as Osbourne, who's kind of like a lanky. He feels more like kind of a lanky, spidery guy, even if the tail of the tape is probably going to have him pretty close. I don't know what we have in Ronaldo Rodriguez yet, but Ode Osbourne is probably a pretty good guy to find out against. Like Osbourne is a guy who looks brilliant in moments. Like he has moments of really impressive offensive brilliance where just he looks smooth, athletic, uses his size well, transitions really seamlessly between different phases of fighting, and then he'll have fights where he just looks miserable, like he can't do anything right. I haven't got a handle on him as a fighter yet. I get his last 2 losses to Almabayev and Filio. I think he just lost to better fighters, and they exposed his defensive grappling, which is probably his biggest Achilles heel. I don't know if Rodriguez is the guy to take advantage of that. Like, he is a decent grappler, but he tends to go there when he's forced to it by his opponent. He was much more willing and quick to go to the ground earlier in his career. He seems to want to have things out on the feet at this point. And that's, I mean, he can win that way against Osbourne, but I think his best route to victory is looking for opportunities to get Osbourne down. Like when, Osbourne is a tall guy with long legs who will sometimes overextend himself while striking. Reactive takedowns are there to be had. I think Rodriguez mixing those in, it will probably do wonders for his striking in this fight, as well as maybe just present opportunities for him to get Osbourne down and tap him out like Osbourne's last 2 opponents have. I'm leaning towards Rodriguez, the slight favorite here. And when Osbourne loses, generally all the wheels tend to fall off the wagon, so I don't see any reason to pick a decision here. Give me Rodriguez to take advantage of an Osbourne mistake in what is a competitive, fun fight right up to that point, but he gets Osbourne to the ground, taps him out within 30, 45 seconds after that. I'm going to say it happens in the 3rd round. Give me Rodriguez by 3rd round submission.
Yeah, this is a really weird fight to open the card. I know I keep going back to that, and I apologize. It's just I never understand the UFC's thinking when it comes to placement. I mean, like you mentioned that Ode Osbourne could be fighting for his UFC career, while Rodriguez, he's only had 1 fight in the UFC. So Ode, like we said, like sometimes he does look brilliant. He's got a lot of good tools. I mean, southpaw, he's long and lengthy. He's a good distance striker. He's become more technical as he's fought more in the UFC. I like his output. I said before, he's got this controlled aggression. He's quick hands. He's accurate. He's explosive. He attacks with combination. His check right hook is really good. He's one of the harder hitters in the division. The issue is I don't think he has the best IQ. He'll toss out some meaningless spinning attacks. He kept doing this like jumping attack against Tyson Nam, who blasted into next week because of it. He's got some good teep kicks. He has good calf kicks, but he does plant his legs, which very heavy on his plant leg, which leaves him to be open to counters. He relies on head movement, but he pulled his head straight back against Manuel Cop and again got destroyed. He's a decent wrestler, but I think his wrestling's overrated. It did give him a win against Charles Johnson, but overall, like, it's not something that I think he'll win many fights because of it. But to his credit, like, beating Charles Johnson, we already talked about, that's a win that has aged really well. If he's on top, good ground and pound. He has 4 sub wins. I hate that he would, like, he's dropped down for ankle locks and stuff, and I am worried about his sub defense. I mean, he was just quickly subbed by Fiallo, and you got to start questioning his chin. I mean, Cop blasting him, Nam blasting him. This is the division where the guys are the easy, not the hardest hitters too, which is concerning. Rodriguez, I like he's only 25. He's right? He's 25, right?
Yeah, 25.
Okay. For some reason, I was questioning my notes for a second. Sorry. He's a pretty good striker on the feet. I think I'm a little higher on his striking than you are. He is heavy on his front foot though, and he doesn't move his head. So he's hit. He get his legs kicked out. He's also hittable. But when he uses a lot of pressure, he marches down his foe. He's constantly switching stances. He's got good output. He's got fast hands. He throws a lot of power shots, a lot of tons of hooks. He will telegraph a little bit by loading up, but he also steps into those shots and he blasts. I mean, he's got 7 TKOs. He is like this like hold your ground type striker where he doesn't back up when being attacked. He's trying to meet you at the point of contact. He can wrestle. He's got 5 submission wins when he gets to fight to the ground. He jumped guillotine in a recent fight and it was super fast. I love it if you put him on his back. He's very active, looking for sweeps, looking for scrambles, subs, off his back. I mean, you mentioned he subbed Bondar in his UFC debut. Yeah, I'm glad that the line is really close because I can really see this fight going away, and that has to do with Osbourne because he's really hard to grasp what kind of fighter he is. He has all the tools to be a very good fighter. He's just missing something. And I used to kind of be on the O'Day Osbourne bandwagon. I'm off it now. I think Rodriguez catches him in a scramble. Give me Rodriguez to lock in a second round submission.
The Noche UFC main card powers on with a lightweight clash between Daniel Zellhuber and Esteban Ribovics. Zellhuber, the 25-year-old Mexican, is 15-1 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He made his debut almost exactly 2 years ago, dropped a unanimous decision to Trey Ogden. Since then, he is perfect with wins over Lando Venata, Christos Yagos, and Francisco Prado. The most recent of those, the Prado fight, was, of course, back in February at the Moreno versus Royval fight night. He will look to make it 4 in a row, continue to present himself as one of the top young prospects in the lightweight division against Ribovics, who, frankly, is looking to do exactly the same. 28-year-old Argentinian is 13-1 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of the Contender Series. He made his debut last March, dropping a unanimous decision to Loic Rajabov. Since then, he has back-to-back wins over Camuela Kirk and Terrence McKinney. The most recent of those, the McKinney fight, was back in May at the Lewis versus Nascimento ESPN card, where he McKinney'd McKinney, head kicking him in just, I think, 37 seconds, something like that. So he's looking for his 3rd straight win. He's not favored to get it. Zellhuber is the last fighter on this card that's a greater than 2-1 favorite, as he is -240, Ribovics +190. Keith, there are a certain number of similarities about these fighters. They're both huge lightweights. They're both, I mean, Zellhuber is definitely young. They're both well under 30. They're both guys that, despite coming from
Mexico and South America, respectively, have been training in the States for a little while. Like Zellhuber is at Extreme Couture, Ribovics is at Kill Cliff. And that's saying something, because one of the more interesting developments in North American MMA over the last 5 or 6 years is that Mexican fighters are staying home and training in Mexico. If anything, Noche UFC is Noche de Lobo Gym. I think Francisco Grasso is probably cornering 6 or 7 fighters on Saturday. Entrum Gym has 3 or 4 fighters on the card. Zellhuber kind of stands out for, relocating his training to Vegas. It's just not the default anymore. Both guys dropped their UFC debuts and have looked pretty damn impressive ever since. So plenty of parallels between these guys. Who do you think gets the win on Saturday, and what does the fight look like?
Yeah, Zellhuber, we keep talking about guys being young. Zellhuber is only 25 himself. So,
and just turned 25, yeah. So
yeah, which is pretty insane, with all the fights he has. Yeah, he's got a lot of things you gotta like. There's a reason why he's a big favorite. He's a long and lengthy guy. He likes to use his length well from distance. He sets up his shots well with feints, so he can counter his opponent's attacks. He's got fast hands. He's got a great jab to kind of keep his opponent at bay. Works the body well. He also moves well to keep his range. He can strike while backpedaling, which is impressive. He's got great power. He kind of has that tall man strength where he doesn't look like he can really crack, but he can. Defensively, he likes the one thing I don't like. Let me say this. I like it in the sense, like, he does shoulder rolls, which I think is very effective at deflecting shots and zapping power. But I am always concerned based on MMA that output looks good and something that when you're rolling, it kind of looks like you might be getting hit. He ate a lot of shots against Christos Thiagos, which is a little concerning. He also brawls a little too much than he should because he's so good at distance. Because of that, he tends to get hurt, and even fights that he can win easily. I love his kicking. I mean, he's a tremendous kicker. He tosses up head kicks so easily. He'll throw some question mark kicks. He attacks with calf kicks. Though sometimes he'll throw some naked kicks from distance. He uses his size really well in the clinch. He had this beautiful judo throw in the Contender Series. I mean, I know it was a while ago, but it's just something I keep in my notes because I still remember it like it was yesterday. Strong ground and pound on top. He's not a huge submission. He only has 2 sub wins. Ribovics is I think he's a good fighter too. Like he's very fun. He's a good athlete. He can fight on both stances. Good output. Tight boxing with not much tells. Works behind a crisp jab. Attacks with combination. Throws a lot of power shots, which can kind of get him a little reckless at times, leaving him open to be countered. I go back to the Contender Series when he was tagged up a lot. He was way more controlled in his UFC debut, which I like. He has really good power. He loves flying knees, and then he didn't show much of a kicking game, or I shouldn't say he didn't show a kicking game I was really impressed with, and then he just crushed Terrence McKinney with a side kick. So not a great wrestler. In his takedown defense is weak, but he's a good overall grappler. He's a BJJ artist, really good at scrambling. He loves looking for submissions. He loves the Kimura. He hits the Kimura from every position. It's kind of like his finishing move almost. He improved his ability to get off the bottom against Camilo Kirk as that fight went on, which was impressive. And he's got the cardio to go hard, like the whole fight. I think it's a great fight. Like I said, I might complain about where things are on the card, but like I said, all 10 fights are fights that I'm really into, whether it's both fighters or at least one fighter I really like. I kind of like both guys. Zellhuber has amazing raw skills. Ribovics, he might even actually have some skills that are actually more technical than Zellhuber. If Ribovics wins, he probably gets a finish.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I'm still in Zellhuber. I mean, at his age, he's where he can make massive growth and kind of clean up his game. I think he jabs up Ribovics from distance, even throw some good kicks. Ribovics is really tough, so I think the fight will go the entire distance. But give me Zellhuber a decision, and And I want to point out that I saw an interview with Zellhuber. I didn't see. I saw a clip, I should say. Where Zellhuber was talking about how much he was taking his training for this fight so seriously that, you know, how like some coaches be like, no women or no sex during training camp. He's like, and I'm taking this one, so I'm not even masturbating. So, you know, or something like, he's like, he doesn't masturbate for a month, so he's not doing it for 2 months or something. So, you know, dude, he's making sacrifices. So, get that guy going.
And you know what? If it gets to fight week and he needs to cut an extra pound, he's probably that backed up at this point to do the blue ball special.
There you go.
Oh man, that's great. All right. I love the breakdown there of both guys. And yeah, Zellhuber is a greater than 2-1 favorite. And I get why, but if I were better, I'd stay away from this one just because Zellhuber's, and you pointed this out, but like kind of his last bad habit is getting in brawls with people he doesn't need to. And his inborn physical advantages just kind of go out the window because he's standing toe to toe with a shorter guy. If he does that with Ribovics, there is a good chance he gets hurt bad. And even if not finished, the fight turns on that. And all of a sudden, you know, Ribovics is winning a split decision. Zellhuber, he's young enough that we've watched him kind of grow up in the cage. He looked good on the Contender Series. You mentioned the great throw he had, and that was against Lucas Almeida, a guy that hasn't really panned out in the UFC, but was a good fighter, and not many people doing that kind of thing to him. He debuted in the UFC. I think he was 23 at the time, ran into Trey Ogden, which is he's another one of those guys that just a super trap fight for a talented, unproven prospect. Like I'm on record as being a pretty big Trey Ogden fan, but if they fought again today, I don't think Ogden gets the wily veteran win over Zellhuber. I think Zellhuber probably crushes him. And he's been improving. He still has his flaws. You pointed out the Yagos fight where, I mean, he lost the first round and Yagos was tagging him up pretty good. You know, Yagos was he's a lot older than Zellhuber. He's like 13 or 14 years older than Zellhuber, a shorter guy, but with really good power. And Zellhuber just took the worst possible approach where he was practically standing toe to toe with the guy. But you know what? He came out for the second round, zapped Yagos with a couple of hard shots from range, like he should do as a 6'1" lightweight. And when Yagos got stung and shot in, he slapped that anaconda choke on him, and the thing was over in seconds. Like, that was smart between round adjustments and really slick transition between phases of MMA. That was veteran shit from a guy that at the time I think was just 24. Yeah, the window for the Trey Ogdens and maybe even the Esteban Ribovics of the world to sneak a win away from Daniel Zellhuber, it's starting to close. I'm starting to believe in the guy as a future contender, and I think he shows it here. Ribovics is as tough as they come. So give me this fight to go all 3 rounds, but Zellhuber just to show his continued maturation and development as a fighter. And the best possible thing to see out of him would be simply a fight where he wins all 3 rounds uncontroversially, doesn't give Ribovics a chance to land big power on his chin. It would be better for me to get a little less exciting fight out of Daniel Zellhuber where he just uncontroversially wins all 3 rounds against a smaller, less skilled fighter than himself. Third from the top at UFC 306 is a featherweight contest between Brian Ortega and Diego Lopes. Ortega, the 33-year-old Californian, is 16-3 with 1 no contest overall. He's 8-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He is a multiple-time featherweight title challenger. He's been a fixture in the top 10, if not the top 5, for what feels like almost a decade at this point. He is coming in off a win. He had a 2-fight series with Yair Rodriguez that, thanks to an injury to Ortega, was spread out over almost 2 full years. He lost their first fight 2 years ago off a kind of freakish shoulder injury, came back, at UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Royval in February and put away Yair Rodriguez with an arm triangle choke in the 3rd round. So he is looking to build on that momentum, remind the UFC and remind the division that he is still a factor in the title picture, and he's going to try to do it against Lopes, who has kind of burst onto the scene in the last couple of years. 29-year-old Brazilian by way of Mexico. He's been training at Lobo Gym since he's been in the UFC. He is 25-6 overall. He is 4-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on season 5 and lost, went and fought a couple times regionally, including in Fury Fighting Championships down here in Texas. Debuted in the UFC last May on short notice against Movsar Evloev, of all things, and acquitted himself very well in a unanimous decision loss, kind of raised his stock even in defeats. And since then, he's done nothing but deliver on that promise, rattling off 4 straight wins, the first 3 of them first-round finishes, before running into Dan Ige at UFC 303 back in June, where he won once again, but the ultra tough, ultra savvy Ige managed to make it to the final horn. So Lopes sort of burst onto the scene in the last 18 months, looking for his 5th straight win, looking to put himself on the short list of featherweight title challengers. Your favorite in this fight, Keith, is -180. Your underdog plus 150. Who are they?
Lopez's favorite.
You're correct. Diego Lopes -180, Brian Ortega plus 150. For
can I ask you who was a favorite like 6 weeks ago?
Yeah. Lopes opened around a -140 favorite or so. He's trending towards -200, but yeah, it's still less than a 2-1 spread there. Here's the thing. Up until say 2 or 3 years ago, I felt as though I had a really good handle on Brian Ortega's game. I could rattle off the things he's good at, the things he's bad at. He was the author of one of my favorite trivial stats where he won his first 8 fights in the UFC without winning a single round, because that's what early Brian Ortega did. I don't have a good handle on Brian Ortega anymore. And it's all down to intangible stuff. His basic skill set is the same. Like, obviously he was a super grappling specialist when he joined the UFC and has developed a very impressive striking game since then. Like, not quite to the level where he could hang with Max Holloway or Alex Volkanovski, but just about everyone else, he's been able to put it on him on the feet. But like, the whole thing over the last couple of years is I keep waiting for Ortega to put in a performance that shows me that maybe his motivation and preparation are slipping, because he's always been a guy, even in his absolute prime, even when he was cruising towards his first title challenge, that openly said, I love surfing too much. I don't want to fight more than twice a year because my weight cut is such that it makes for a long camp and it gets in the way of the other things I want to do with my life, which is a healthy attitude to have in general, but doesn't, like, it did not portend a fighter who was still going to be in the sport at a high level, cruising towards his mid-30s. But Ortega looked pretty damn good against Yair Rodriguez back in February. And because of that, I think he represents a logical step up for Diego Lopes. Like, Lopes landed in the UFC, showed that he at least belonged in the cage with Movsar Evloev, quickly showed the UFC that not to waste their time giving him the likes of even Pat Sabatini and Sadiq Youssef, who were like borderline top 15-ish fighters. Like, even those guys, it was not worth the UFC's time to put them in front of Diego Lopes. He beat Dan Ige pretty solidly, and now he gets Ortega. And Ortega looked good enough in his last fight that if Lopes blows through him, I'm not complaining if he gets a title shot in his next fight. I'm so excited to see what happens if and when this fight goes to the ground. It's such a sensational matchup just everywhere. Both guys with really impressive, if slightly unorthodox, striking and just incredible lights out ground games. Both big featherweights who are super athletic. What a fantastic fight. Whatever we may say about the order of the rest of this card, the top 3 fights in this card are dynamite, just fantastic matchups. Restaurant, the top 3 fights on this card are as good as any pay-per-view the UFC will put out this year.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. For me, the difference in this fight and the reason I'm leaning towards Lopes is Ortega's hitability on the feet. He's become just a better and better offensive striker. He's always had incredible power that just seems to come naturally from him, but he's become just a more and more diverse striker who kind of uses his long frame really well, but he remains hittable, and Lopes is a hard hitter. Because of that, I do worry that Ortega is going to get the worst of exchanges on the feet in a way that compromises him, or maybe Lopes hurts him bad enough to actually finish him with strikes, even though that seems almost impossible. Also, Ortega at this point, even though he still looks incredibly youthful and smooth, he's 33. He has 12 or 13 fights in the UFC, and in some of them he's taken an unbelievable amount of damage. Max Holloway put on one of the most Max Holloway performances of his career against Ortega. Volkanovski put an enormous amount of punishment on Ortega. Even Korean Zombie in a fight where Ortega basically washed him. Korean Zombie hit Ortega a lot.
He takes a lot of damage even when he wins.
Yeah, even when he wins, he takes a lot of damage. I pointed out, he lost every round of his first 8 or 9 fights in the UFC, even while winning all the fights. Even as he, proved himself better than Yair Rodriguez, Rodriguez hit himself. That's got to come crashing down at some point. And Lopes is not a guy he wants to keep that streak up against. And on the ground, while Ortega is obviously an ultra elite grappler, Lopes landed in the UFC and kind of made his bones by hanging with Movsar Evloev in just an absolute wrestling heavy scramble fest, and really held his own with one of the best guys in the entire sport at that. I guess for me, it comes down to, I may not have a handle on where Ortega is in terms of being shop worn, being motivated, but even if we get best Brian Ortega, I think it's a kind of changing of the guard moment here. Give me Diego Lopes to win an uncontroversial decision. Maybe Ortega wins around here, but there's no question that Lopes won at least 2 of them, and Lopes is the one that's kind of rolling downhill by the end of the fight. I think Ortega might actually be a little frustrated by the end of this fight at how much success Lopes is having on the ground against him. And I think it'll be one of those fights where, by the look at his face, now look at mine test, which, that's not how fights are really scored, but I think Lopes is going to put some punishment on Ortega in this fight. So give me Diego Lopes to make his case for a title shot sooner than later with a entertaining but unquestionable decision over Brian Ortega.
Yeah. Do you remember who you picked when they were scheduled to fight 6 weeks ago?
I'm pretty sure I picked Lopes.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah,
I did too. I was wondering, are you more confident now than based on his fight with Danny Ige, or did it not change at all?
The Danny Ige fight was an incredibly entertaining throwaway that, I almost forget it happened. Like I know he beat Dan Ige, but they weighed in at 160 pounds. It was put together on 4 hours notice or less than 4 hours notice. Like it was a blast, but I didn't learn anything about either fighter except that they both rule.
Yeah, he weighed in while the event was going on. And it was crazy. And both guys weighed in and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna say I nothing changed to me with the Dan Ige fight. Not from what I saw in the fight, but more what changed for me is my concerns about Ortega became even bigger. Or everything I said about Ortega, I have these same exact notes. He hasn't fought since then, so I'm just gonna I didn't change anything. I mean, he's a really big guy for the weight class. He's athletic. He can fight at both stances. He's a very good pressure striker who pops out a good jab. Obviously, go back to that Korean Zombie fight where he's just smashed him up with a jab. Attacks with combination. He works the body well. He blocks shots by pillaring, which is why Volkanovski ripped him to the body so much. He throws a lot of kicks, and he throws a lot of kicks because he isn't worried about being caught. He doesn't mind getting taken down. He likes to get to the clinch and look for takedowns in there. He loves to reach over his opponent's head and lock a guillotine from the standing position. He doesn't have much entries, so he's not really shooting, but he more reaches for snatch singles. And I've said before, he is, and I don't mean this in this, but he's like the JV version of Charles Oliveira in his grappling style, in the set where it's more opportunistic than it is decorated. And I just mean the JV version as in like, I shouldn't say JV, that's not terrible, but I mean, he just didn't have as many submissions as Charles Oliveira. So I'm giving him the top spot because of it, but it's, he needs the smallest opening, and then he ends the fight. He jumps on that opening, and he jumps on the opening, and he'll grind on him until the sub is there. He has some of the slickest back takes in UFC history. He'll pull guard if he has to. I am worried about his durability. He's been in so many wars. I mean, even the win against Yair Rodriguez was beating the brakes off of him in his last fight before he does what Ortega does. Plus, he's had so many injuries. I mean, I said it last time, he rolled his ankle in the warm-up of the fight in the intros. So that's the kind of luck this guy has. Then you add in, whatever happened last one was sickness and could have been due to weight cutting and all kinds of stuff. I don't know. Diego Lopes. So now my notes are going to be different for him because he actually did fight. I like this guy a lot. I mean, like I said, as far as what happened in the fight against Danny, I'm giving both fighters a pass because it isn't fair to judge either guy whether it was good or bad. Because you're fighting a guy on 4 hours notice, different weight classes, and no film study, no nothing, not even getting your mind ready for him. Yeah. I mean, it's truly a service we've never seen before in the UFC. Mm-hmm. As far as this fight, he's a very big welterweight. He's well-rounded. He's fast. He's got quick hands. He's explosive. Those short, tight shots. He attacks with combinations. He's got a beautiful left hook. I love that he targets the body. He loves to throw down in the pocket. I mean, he blasted Sadiq Youssef with some mean uppercuts. He actually hit Ige with some uppercuts too. So I said I wasn't really talking about that fight, but what he did was good. He hurt Ige with some uppercuts. He showed against Evelev and Sadiq Youssef that he can crack, and that's because he really steps into his power shots. He's got some strong calf kicks. He has some holes defensively, especially not moving his head enough. He's not this great offensive wrestler. But his defensive wrestling was good against Pat Sabatini. It looked really good. He threw Sabatini on his head with a wizard kick. He's a very good grappler. I mean, he's a BJJ black belt. He's competed in like the highest level of BJJ competitions. He's a serious submission threat. He's got 12 subs already on his record. He chained sub attempts together well. I mean, he had Evelev in the deepest arm bar, and then later on in this deep knee bar, plus a bunch of other sub attempts. He caught Gavin Tucker in a submission. He'll jump guillotine, and it's crazy fast. The issue is he'll play BJJ on his back instead of trying to get back up, and that is not the strategy to have with Brian Ortega. If Ortega takes you down, do not play BJJ there. So I just want to ask you if you were less confident or more confident. I'm even more confident, and it's not because of what Lopes showed against Ige. I saw some people thought, being that it was Danny Ige coming in short notice, that he, not short, beyond short notice, that Lopes should have like dominated, should have smashed him in the first round, and some people feel less confident in Lopes. Again, I'm giving it a pass. The issue is I'm not sure what's going on with Ortega. He's lost 2 out of 3 fights. You always talk about his motivation. Never really is going on with him. The weight issue, being an issue. I mean, he was talking about going up to lightweight before, and now he's fighting at featherweight, and he's getting sick. And I mean, I picked Lopes 6 weeks ago, but I'm even more confident now. Ortega has taken, like you mentioned, he's taken massive beatings in his career, and he hasn't stopped. I think he takes another massive beating. I think Lopes smashes him. I don't think he knocks him out, but I think he just dominates him for the entire fight. Give me Lopes by decision.
That brings us to the co-main event of Noche UFC, a women's flyweight title fight between defending champ Alexa Grasso and former champ Valentina Shevchenko. Grasso, the 31-year-old Mexican, is 16-3-1 overall. She's 8-3-1 in the UFC since joining as a top-level contender in Invicta. 8-3-1 in the UFC, 5-0-1 since moving up from strawweight to flyweight. Won her first 5 fights at flyweight, including winning the title from Shevchenko in their first meeting last March at UFC 285. They drew in the rematch at UFC Fight Night 227, Noche UFC, last September, almost exactly a year ago. It was a split draw. Here, they are going to meet for the 3rd time, and potentially the 3rd time out of more than 3, depending on what happens on Saturday. But that'll be up to Grasso and Shevchenko. Shevchenko, 36-year-old from Kyrgyzstan, by way of Peru, by way of Thailand, kind of a world traveler. 23-4-1 overall, 12-3-1 in the UFC. Like Grasso, she started in a different division. She started at bantamweight. She's 9-1 since dropping to flyweight. She was not the UFC's inaugural flyweight champ, but they were just keeping the seat warm for her. She went on a truly dominant run before dropping the title to Grasso again last March. They fought to a split draw in September, and here we have, well, not the rubber match, but since they're not 1-1, but the trilogy fight. Odds, your favorite, Keith, is -125. Your underdog is even money, +100. Who are they?
All right. So I'll tell you who I think is going to be the favorite. I think Shevchenko's going to be the favorite, but I think Grasso should be. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not like telling you what my pick is, because you ask me all the time who I think the favorite is, and then I'll say I think the person's favorite, then I pick that up. But I mean, it's the bigger name, and a lot of people thought she won the last fight. But the reason why I'm saying I think Grasso should be, she beat her, and then they fought to a draw where I thought Grasso won, but my point is the second fight, whether feel how that was scored, she at least showed that the first fight wasn't a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
So who's the favorite?
You got to have more faith in the public, Keith. You were correct. Grasso is the favorite. She's -125.
Oh,
Shevchenko +100. Yeah, you already mentioned you scored the second fight for Grasso. So did I. MMA decisions, almost a dead even split, but leaning just slightly towards Grasso. But it was divided enough that it tells the whole story, because it was a extremely competitive fight and a very good fight. I mean, both their fights have been very good so far. It's not quite to the level of Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, but it's a little of the same thing where, yeah, okay, if we get a 4th fight between these two, at least the fights are all pretty good so far. Here's the thing for me. I feel as though I don't expect either of these women to unveil like some grand new wrinkle in their game. They're both veteran fighters. I mean, Grasso has 20 pro fights. Shevchenko has almost 30. Like, they are who they are as fighters. But with, I mean, if these women were to go on to fight 10 times, the issue is that Grasso is probably squarely in her prime right now, just having turned 31 last month, where Shevchenko is 36. She's had a long and very distinguished MMA career, a lot of it, up a weight class, taking cannon fire from the, Amanda Nunez's of the world. She had a long and eventful kickboxing and Muay Thai career before that. Shevchenko is probably on the downslope. And I think her recent outcomes kind of bear that out, because even before the 2 fights with Grasso, going back all the way over 2 years at this point, a lot of observers thought Taila Santos should have beaten her. I mean, if you go to MMAdecisions.com, I think more people scored the Taila Santos fight for Santos than scored the last fight for Grasso. Like, just Shevchenko, up until the Santos fight, which again, that's June of 2022, she was arguably the most dominant fighter in the sport of either gender and in any weight class. She had 5 or 6 straight flyweight title defenses. None of them were even close. It was to the point where people like Jennifer Maia was getting credit for winning a single round against her. Lauren Murphy was getting credit for making it past the 3rd round. Like, people were looking for moral victories, just, for keeping things interesting against Shevchenko. She was coming into every single title defense as like a -1,000 favorite, -900 favorite. She started looking human about 2 years ago. She barely beat Santos, and that win, that narrow win over Santos, hasn't aged all that well, because Santos has gone over to PFL and been just kind of just another flyweight, like good, not great. I think if these two had fought in like 2020, I think it's entirely possible that Shevchenko would have blown Grasso out. But right now, they're neck and neck. And I think part of it is down to Grasso just coming into her prime, while Shevchenko is probably in the final act of her legendary career. What was most surprising to me in the first Grasso Shevchenko fight was how, well, I say competitive. She ended up tapping Shevchenko out, but like how well she was able to hold her own on the ground. Because the thing that you have always correctly pointed out is that even though Shevchenko is, obviously has highlight reel knockouts and was a high level Muay Thai striker and kickboxer before MMA, during her title run, her offensive wrestling and grappling were probably her most lights out skill set. Like, she's just unbelievable. Her mix of technique, athleticism, just crushing strength, killer instinct on the ground. I it was impressive that Grasso had as much success as she did on the ground in their first meeting. And obviously the way she got the finish there, where she was losing the fight up to that point, and just one mistake by Shevchenko, and as beat up and tired as Grasso probably was, instantly took advantage. The fight was over like 5 seconds later. You mentioned in the rematch, Grasso showed that wasn't a fluke. Grasso held her own in the striking as well as on the ground. I feel like Grasso is gradually eclipsing Shevchenko here, like where she had to kind of snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat in their first meeting. She fought her at the very least to a dead stalemate in the second meeting. And I think the trend continues here. I would love it if we got another just all-timer exciting finish like we did in their first fight, or another just nip tuck 5-round battle like we did in their second fight. But I'm not picking that. I think actually, I think this is a fight that we'll see something like 50-45 Grasso or 49-46, where Shevchenko just looks just a tick slower, like she has in kind of each of her last 4 fights, and Grasso looks the same or better. Give me Grasso to hold her own and then some on the feet, for Shevchenko not to have her takedowns and just brutal ground and pound and grappling as any kind of safety outlet. Yeah, give me Grasso to win something like 49-46 in a fight that feels competitive in the moment, but Grasso just keeps piling up the rounds.
Yeah, I'll say this. I was looking at MMA decisions, and there was a lot more for Shevchenko over Santos, but me and you both scored it for Santos.
Really? Okay. So maybe I'm misremembering that. Like I thought of it as one that was kind of like the Dominic Reyes, John Jones thing.
No.
Okay.
But I think it was more of the Gustafsson John Jones thing, where because no one expected it to be close, that it felt like a win for her. That said, me and you scored it for Santos, so nobody else matters.
Nobody else matters. And let me interject one thing. Like,
sure.
I apologize for that misrepresentation earlier. But
someone in the chat was going to let us know.
Oh, absolutely.
We speak for 3 hours, and if one of us misspeaks one little stat, well, that's the only thing I'll mention.
And we still love you guys. Like, come at us. But
sure.
It was kind of like, Jones versus Reyes, or maybe even the first Jones versus Gustafsson fight. It was eye-opening to see Shevchenko in there against a woman who she couldn't just bully, a woman who was like as big, strong, and athletic as her.
Sure.
And that's kind of carried over to the Grasso fights. And that's the most surprising thing for me, considering that, again, Grasso's a former strawweight, but there we are. Like that, the Santos fight was the first time we saw Shevchenko, at least at flyweight, meet her physical match.
Yeah, and I mean, Santos has done well in the PFL. I think it's the one that she lost to Erin Blanchfield. That's the one that made her look bad. Yeah. As far as this rivalry and just the second fight between Shevchenko and Grasso, it was I think it was 12-11 for Grasso. So that is as close as it comes. I wonder what will happen if Shevchenko beats Grasso, because now it's 1-1-1. Will they give? I know Dana said this is the last one, but it's kind of shitty if you're Grasso to be like, wait a minute, I gave her 2 rematches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know obviously Grasso doesn't have that, successful streak of defenses that Shevchenko had. So like, I understand it's a little unfair comparison, and there's a long line because of this rivalry. It does feel like, and we don't know how this fight will go, but it does feel a little bit like the Moreno-Figueiredo rivalry, where it's a great rivalry that for some reason is underappreciated by UFC fans, or I should say MMA fans, where when we think about, sometimes they'll talk about great rivalries, it was not as competitive as fights as these were, like the Couture Liddell fights. Not saying one of them were close.
No,
people rank it as the greatest rivalries. I mean, Couture smashed Liddell the first one, and Liddell knocked him out twice pretty easily the second and third time. Yeah. I think of John Jones and Daniel Cormier. I mean, I know technically they only fought once, but we've seen them fight each other twice in the octagon, and John Jones smashed him both times. So, these are the ones that people think of great.
How many great rivalries have actually been competitive from fight to fight?
Figueiredo Moreno. Chandler Alvarez.
Yeah, Chandler and Alvarez, where
I'm sure there's a lot we're not thinking of. I'm sure there's.
But those, I mean, for high level ones, I mean, that's
Even like
Those-
ones that have, like the ones that have different results, like Couture and Liddell, Faber, Cruz, and stuff, that they weren't close fights. The ones that are epic ones. Anyways, I think them coaching on tough doesn't help.
Adesanya and Pereira is actually kind of there. Like,
Oh yeah, there you go. Adesanya and Pereira. That's a great one. Not counting the kickboxing one, but even those were
competitive fights. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as this fight, I think Grasso, I'm glad that she's the favorite because I really feel like she's one of these most underrated champions in the UFC where she hasn't, she gets this win over Shevchenko and she hasn't become the star that we expected her to be. I mean, they gave her the Ultimate Fighter show, but that show is so dead. Like, like it's almost a punishment now to get that than it was back in the day. That was your chance to be a star. She's a very good kickboxer. She's technically sound. She's got great footwork. She's a bit of an in and out fighter where she gets in, lands, and then tries to avoid strikes on the counters. She's got good volume. I mean, I always go back to like the Karolina Kovacevic fight where she just smashed it with just her volume. She has quick hands, and I mean, like how fast. Like Vivian Araujo has always been the girl who not the greatest fighter, but she beats people with speed, and Grasso was too fast for her, which was impressive. She also busted up Araujo with a nice jab. She attacks with combinations and then gets out before counters. She has underrated power. I mean, she hurt Shevchenko a few times in their rematch. She's got a good kicking game, especially when she doubles up. She'll go low and then she'll go high. She's an underrated offensive wrestler. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with just like, and not the stereotype, but being Mexican, they're not really known for their wrestling. And she's a good wrestler. She has greatly improved her takedown defense. That said, I know people are like, what are you talking about? Shevchenko, like the argument for Shevchenko to win this thing was the takedown. But yeah, she still has a long way to go, especially because Shevchenko is such a great wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Shevchenko did take her down a lot in rematch. So I am acknowledging that. But I'm saying at one point, Grasso was very easy to take down. And Grasso has a good get-up game. The reason why Shevchenko took it down is because Grasso been making her work and get back to her feet. And she's a very good grappler, good back takes. I go back to like the Esparza fight. She had a bunch of submission attempts on Esparza, almost subbed her. Obviously, she caught Valentina in their first fight. And, one question in the last fight was, I know she had, she's going 25 minutes before, but like, could she go 25 minutes with someone who's like physically, empowering as Shevchenko is, like someone who'll get in the clinch and battle in there. And I mean, she had the card to go all 25 minutes. Shevchenko, I mean, she's still well-rounded. I think she has a lot of tools on the feet, tons of variety. She can attack with so many different tools. Throws a lot of combinations with different attacks. One thing I've always loved about her, she's good at changing her rhythm. And I was thinking about this today, and I was like writing down people that it was always big at. And it's like the elite of the elite, like Max Holloway and Alex Volkanovski, Demetrius Johnson. And I know he just announced his retirement, and you can't find a bigger Demetrius Johnson fan than I am. It is a guy that was the absolute best at this. So that's something that she's always done really good. That it's hard to time her because she'll come in at one speed and change up things. And she's explosive. She's really good from distance. She tries to get in and then land and move. Good at landing and sliding on an angle. She's got a lot of feints, sets up traps with these feints that she can expose later. Great at timing her opponent's attacks. She's accurate. Her jab is her best weapon. She counters kicks. When you throw a kick at her, instead of checking a kick, she'll kind of like come forward with straight shots, trying to time you coming in with the kicks. I have two major concerns though with right now in her career on the feet. One is her volume has dropped. She doesn't have the same volume she had 3 years ago. Another big worry, I said two because I actually have three. Another big worry is that she can't strike off her back foot like she used to. Before, you could pressure her and she'd kind of stay on the back foot and still be tagging it. That's not the case. And the third one is what I saw in the last fight. I'm a little worried about her chin. I mean, she was dropped by Grasso. She's been hurt by Grasso. At her age, 36, is that something that she can continue to take? To her grappling, she's a very good wrestler. It's something that Shevchenko, when she first came in the UFC, she was known as a striker, and then everyone was like, oh my gosh, she's really underrated grappling. And now it's like, man, her grappling's probably the best part of her game.
Mm-hmm.
She loves hitting like clinch throws. She also has nice entries. She's got a good top game, hard ground and pound. She has 7 submission wins. The concern, though, in her grappling is when she's put on her back. I mean, she struggled to get off the top. Get off the bottom against Talia Santos, and she actually got taken down by Alexa Grasso, and she struggled to get off the bottom. So this fight's incredible. I mean, I am worried about Shevchenko's chin. This fight can go either way. I'm glad that the fight is really close. Both fighters are really good and have so many tools for victory. I'm going to slightly disagree. I think Grasso has appeared to getting better. But I also understand what you're saying.
Did I like if I said anything that implied that I don't think Grasso's has improved? I did not mean to.
Okay, because you kind of said we know where she is, and
but like going back to when she joined the UFC out of Invicta, like her, because back in, I guess, 2014, 2015, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And Angela Hill was the Invicta strawweight champ. Grasso was the obvious next title challenger. The UFC snatched them both up within 2 months of each other.
Mm.
I don't know who would have won if they fought at that time in Invicta, but at the time, Grasso was pretty much a one-dimensional boxer. She is so well-rounded now. It's tempting to just take her as emblematic of the development of Mexican MMA, considering that, well, her dad is the coach at Mexico's best team.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah. I don't expect any huge improvements between the last fight and now, but she's made huge improvements over the last 6 years or so.
Yeah. So what I do agree a lot, what you said was that Grasso's in her prime. I'm convinced that this is a prime. What I am convinced of, that Grasso ain't gonna look worse. Now obviously you fight in UFC title fights, you could always get beat up easily because the other person's great. I just think Grasso's definitely at the top of her game. I agree that Shevchenko is showing signs of decline. I think we can question if she's still in her prime. That's the thing. You said that, she's probably not in her prime anymore. I think that's fair assessment. I'm just not sure if that's 100% true. You would think at 36 and all the miles on her that would be the case. And I'm actually leaning that way. I'm leaning that she's not in her prime anymore. But it's not either a possibility that she doesn't win this title fight and she's still the best female fighter in the world. But like I said, I'm leaning that way. I think Grasso hurts her on the feet. I think Grasso stuffs some takedowns. I thought the striking wasn't close in their last fight. I thought Grasso was clearly winning the striking exchanges. I shouldn't say clearly was winning striking, but she was the more effective striker. She was landing harder. I don't want to seem like she was just teeing off the whole time, and Shevchenko had nothing coming back at her. But the big moments on the feet were won by Grasso. I think it's going to happen again, and I think so many of the top fighters, I think Anderson Silva, I think Adesanya in his last fight, have that moment where we start seeing the cracks and then suddenly it completely breaks. I think it's going to completely break. I think Grasso's going to club her. I think she's going to sub her. I think she's going to hit. I think she's going to connect in the third round with a big shot, hurt her, and I think she's going to lock in a submission. Give me Grasso by third round submission.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC 306, a men's bantamweight title fight between your defending champ, Sean O'Malley, and challenger, Merab Dvalishvili. O'Malley, the 29-year-old Montana native, is 18-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 10-1 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of season 1 of Dana White's Contender Series. He is, of course, your champ, having snatched the title from Aljamain Sterling just a little over a year ago at UFC 292. He defended it in a grudge match against Marlon Vera at UFC 299 in March. This will be his second scheduled title defense, and it is against the man with probably the most overdue title shot in the entire promotion at this point, Dvalishvili. 33-year-old Georgian by way of Long Island is 17-4 overall, 10-2 in the UFC. He's on a 10-fight win streak. He has already fought once this year. He took a unanimous decision over Henry Cejudo at UFC 298 back in February. Odds here, another close one. Your favorite is minus 130. Your underdog plus 110. Who are they, Keith?
The favorite is minus 130. The underdog is plus 110.
That's correct.
Merab's favorite.
Your favorite is Sean O'Malley, minus 130. Underdog, Merab Dvalishvili, plus 110. Now, considering that this is a card that is going to bring in, it's the Conor effect. It's a card that's going to bring in not just casual eyeballs, but eyeballs that only watch Sean O'Malley, like they're not MMA fans, they're Sean O'Malley fans. That line might move, but if it moves, it's probably going to keep moving in the O'Malley direction. It's
the one thing and I'm not saying this is the comparison, but like if you were trying to pick a Conor fight, and this is not perfect, so don't at me, don't say, oh, Merab wasn't the wrestler that Khabib is, but isn't this the Khabib? But Khabib was still a pretty hefty favorite.
You know,
again, it's not apples and oranges. I mean, it's apples and oranges, not completely, but I'm saying
it's close. I think it's closer to Chad Mendes versus Conor, just because.
But Merab's
Khabib on top of everything else was way bigger than Conor.
Yeah, that's true. Merab's name though is closer to Khabib.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like they both have 12 to 15 letters in their last name, and test the bounds of the Sherdog like front page interface. So yeah,
like he could win the title, and I'm still not sure if I pronounce his name perfectly correct. Everything. Shout out to my boy Craig Allen. Every single time someone mentions Merab, I think about when we used to do a show way back in the day, and he used to always impersonate Matt Sarah saying, "Come on, Merab!" The way my boy.
It's so good.
Craig Allen. Shout out to that boy, my boy.
You and I have broken down quite a few Merab fights, quite a few O'Malley fights. I know that you and I are big fans of both guys. I'm just talking strictly in terms of watching their fights, breaking down their fights style. Nothing to do with the personalities, even though I think they're both actually like very entertaining.
Same. So do I. This is going to be a fun week. This is going to be a really fun week.
It's going to be it's already been kind of building up to that. And I'm glad we have this to kind of make up for the lack of chemistry between Grasso and Shevchenko. Like they stuck them in a house together for 6 or 8 weeks, and they couldn't even like muster up the good grace to hate each other. They're just kind of and they're both pretty known quantities. Like obviously Merab, along with his like parallel at welterweight Bilal Muhammad, like so many parallels between the two. Like incredible wrestlers through technique, but also just relentlessness and cardio, despite being maybe a little bit undersized for their divisions. And their wrestling and their willingness to borrow a term from Daniel Cormier, to embrace the grind, overshadows very underrated striking games in both guys. Like Merab is not nearly as polished a kickboxer as Bilal is, but Merab makes up for it with just ridiculous pace and volume. Like
even more than Bilal, which is saying a lot.
Merab is like the MMA equivalent of a baseball player that can hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases. in a season. Like if Merab had a fight where he landed double-digit takedowns and over 100 strikes, I mean, he's probably already done it once, and I'm just not looking at his stat sheet right now. But he is the kind of guy that could land double-digit takedowns and triple-digit strikes in a fight, and you're like, oh, so it was only 3 rounds, huh? That's Merab. He's with the possible exception of Bilal, he is maybe the king in the whole sport of weaponized cardio, where it's not just that he can go 3 rounds or 5 rounds, but he can do it at such a furious pace that his opponent has to deal with it or they're going to lose the fight. Like if you can't keep up with Merab's pace, you're going to lose the fight. That's what's impressive. Like his striking is not technically beautiful. He's a short, stocky guy, and in terms of striking, he makes it worse by not always throwing the straightest shots. Like, yeah, he is what he is. He's like the Looney Tunes Tasmanian devil in the cage. O'Malley, about as different as you could get. He's one of the taller guys in the division. He's not as skinny as he was. You look at him in his UFC debut, he's got like 2 tattoos. He's this skinny kid with a mop of hair. And I think his hair was still just its regular color back then. He's a different guy now. It's like looking at 1985 Michael Jordan versus 1995 Michael Jordan. Like he's put on 20 pounds of muscle. Like O'Malley is a big bantamweight at this point, not just a tall bantamweight. He is one of the, I mean, he's one of the most fluid technicians on the feet in the sport, maybe in the history of the sport. Like you're better at breaking that down than me, just because he enters that prime McGregor, prime Adesanya, prime Anderson Silva range where even other very good strikers are just a step behind him. He's pulling them into his traps. There's just so much like nuance and intelligence to it.
Yeah, he's good.
Like I enjoy Sean O'Malley's personality, but he's not a guy with a ton of like profound statements on the mic. He doesn't come across as like some kind of super genius, but in terms of his fight intelligence, off the charts, and has only been more and more so since he's been at the MMA lab. It's a underratedly great matchup, him and John Crouch. For me, there are 2 obvious outcomes here. Like either O'Malley's striking wins out and he either knocks Merab out or just kind of plays the matador the whole time, pieces him up, gives him angles, and Merab struggles to get his hands on him, or Merab takes him down, rinses, repeats. The crowd is booing its head off. And O'Malley is gesturing helplessly at the ref, hoping for a stand up. Those are the 2 most obvious.
Yeah.
Here, the reason I lean the way I do is that even as great as Merab is, and you and I both think he should probably be 12-0 in the UFC right now.
Yeah.
Good as he is, and as impressive as his streak is, and the incredible list of fighters he's beaten on his way to get here, he's still very hittable. His striking, even at its best, and his wrestling, even at their best, he has to absorb some shots on the way in. And better minds than me have said that, including Ray Longo. Ray Longo, in an interview in the last couple of days, just admitted, Merab's going to have to eat some shots to get in range on O'Malley. That's not what you want to hear. Merab fought some of the hardest hitters in his divisions. Like Cejudo is best known as a wrestler, but he is a crushingly hard hitter. Petr Yan has good power. Jose Aldo has incredible power. Marlon Moraes has great power. John Dodson is one of the pound-for-pound hardest hitters in the history of the sport. Merab survived all of those. But this will be the first time that he has fought somebody with the mix of power, timing, and range as O'Malley. And O'Malley's like he's capable of delivering his power with such a variety of strikes at a variety of ranges. He specializes in the shot that you don't see coming. Again, kind of like Conor, especially on his way up, kind of like Adesanya, kind of like Anderson Silva. That's why I'm leaning O'Malley here. Like Merab's eat 2 strikes to deliver 1 and then shoot a double leg and go crazy for the next 30 seconds thing, I think is a recipe for disaster against O'Malley. I love Merab as a fighter. I hope we get a lot more of them. Hell, I hope we get him challenging for titles again. But I think this is actually going to be a little ugly and one-sided. I think he's going to end up either running into air or running into O'Malley's fists, feet, and knees a lot. I think O'Malley will probably hurt him early, and there's no quit in Merab, so he's going to keep coming. But I think he's going to get beat up in the first round. I don't know what adjustments he can make between rounds because it's literally who he is as a fighter. And I think it's just going to be more of the same going into the second. Give me O'Malley by second round knockout.
Yeah, wow. Dude, you got me so freaking juiced up for this fight now. I mean, I always get super excited for these fights. There's just something about the pay-per-views, the big, huge fights when we break them. Obviously, we go much deeper in the main events than we do in the other ones, just because, I mean, shit, people complain about how long we take out the prelims. If we if we broke down the prelims as much as we broke down the main events, then this show would be like 6 hours long or something. This fight is so great, and I agree with you that there probably is two outcomes. It's O'Malley. Really three outcomes. O'Malley starching him, which is possibly O'Malley doing exactly what you said, and moving and ducking and just being too elusive and Merab being too, coming straight at him. Or the third is and I was trying to think how I wanted to word this, and this is the only thing that keeps coming to mind, and I want to be sensitive because I know people can misinterpret what I say, but like, I think about the guys in Normandy when they stormed the beaches, and they had to go towards the danger to win. Yeah, they couldn't have stayed on the far out on the beach and try to win. They had to rush up into the beach, up the hill, getting shot at, and obviously the closer they run to it, the closer you are to get shot, the easier to get shot. Again, don't at me. I'm not saying Merab is, guys, the bravest people who's ever lived. I'm not saying that. Okay, if he gets knocked out by Sean O'Malley, he will live. I'm not talking about 18-year-old kids who died for our freedom. Okay, so I'm not. So don't. I just say my point is that going to the insane mentality you have to have to run towards danger. And again, I'm not calling on military members insane, so don't at that either. I'm saying just that, whatever I'm saying. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm backing out. I'm trying to apologize for something I didn't do wrong.
You didn't even say.
I'll say this: if Sean O'Malley does exactly what you say, every fight he fights, the haters have to get smaller and smaller. The doubters have to get smaller and smaller. If he fights a guy like Merab, who's, as O'Malley has risen up the rankings, was supposed to be this terrible stylistic matchup for him, and then he starches him, what else is there? You know what I mean? I mean, obviously there's always big contenders. I know that, but I'm saying, like, it's kind of when Conor beat Chad Mendes, and you was like, you compared to that, and I think that's a fair comparison, where there was a hater and they said, oh, he's always avoided wrestlers. Then he fought the wrestler and he knocked him out. And again, then there was still that, well, he fought the wrestler in 2 weeks. I mean, there's always somebody that will continue. And then there'll be Merab wasn't that good. He lost to Ricky Simone. Like, there'll be that argument too, but which is stupid. But and I know the argument that when Conor knocked out Jose Aldo, really was hard to argue, but then there was still the people say, whoa, it's a one punch, it was fluke. Anybody can land one perfectly lucky punch. It was like, it'd be more impressive if you beat him for 25 minutes. Like, there's always be somebody.
Sure.
The skills of O'Malley is really impressive. But you know what I think is most impressive is that he's a visionary. He saw himself as being special when he was. I remember seeing him I think it was LFA, or it might have been RFA back then. When I saw him fight, I was like, wow, this gets legit. And when I was
it was LFA, like right before he was on the Contender Series.
I wasn't sure how far back, if it was still RFA then. but he saw himself special, and then he had that moment on the Contender Series, and it was just like he realized what he did, and that he's not only is he going to the UFC, but he just legitimized this whole show. You know, he became the star. He's still the star of the show. Like that moment is still the biggest moment of the sport. And you think about the people who've been on that show, people who've gone on to win the titles, you know, people who've become stars. And now, like him seeing so special, and he made it happen. There's people who are like that, and it's super impressive. Now, obviously, he's an elite of the elite fighters. I mean, he's a UFC champion. He's an insane athlete. He's long and lengthy. He moves so well. He understands range. Like you talked about his strike, he understands range so well. And you know what he doesn't get credit for? And I think we saw that in the last fight against Marlon Vera, and I think we saw it in the Pierre Dion. He has a lot more dog in him than he gets credit with. Like people think of him as just like super slick striker from the outside, and you know, he's not one of these guys who can like bite down in his mouthpiece and slug it out. He can slug it out too. Like he's got more dog in him than he's super explosive. He's this really quick twitch guy. He could just snap, and it's on you. Fast hands. He flows between stances so well, and he's so good in both stances. He's very accurate. He's got a nice jab, tons of variety in striking. He's so good at hiding his right hand. Like that right hand is deadly. He's so good. He's got. I mean, against Marlon Vera, he was piecing up with clean 1-2s. I saved this when I was writing my list of people who can change their rhythm really well. O'Malley made that list. I just didn't want to say it then because he's really good at changing up his rhythm, is making it hard to kind of time when he's coming. He's good at if he wants to challenge and beating his opponent to the point of contact. He's good at picking up his opponent's rhythm. He lays traps throughout the fight. He does well set up shots well with feints. I like that Marlon Vera, he was going to the body in their rematch. That was a huge part. New layer to his game we haven't seen as much. He's good at slipping shots and being in the perfect position to counter to land the cleaner shot himself. He will pull his head straight back sometimes though, which obviously is a natural thing to do, but he also drops his hands to slip shots, which is kind of dangerous. He was doing that against Pedro Munoz in the first. Was it the first? I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my fights. No, we'll just keep Pedro Munoz. Doesn't matter. Oh no, it was against Marlon Vera. It was. He was doing that against Marlon Vera too, which is obviously a little gutsy, but he's one of the hardest hitters pound for pound in the UFC. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, he hurt Pedro. Pierre Dion many times in their fight. That was the fight, regardless if you thought he lost. That was the fight. You know, whether you thought he won or lost, that was the one that was like, you can't deny his skills anymore.
I scored that fight for Jan, but I was like, okay, O'Malley is absolutely legit. He's probably a future champ.
Yeah, I think I might have scored it for O'Malley. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it was one of those where like you can't deny that he's a top guy. I mean, obviously he blasted Aljamain Sterling. He's got power in both of his hands and both stances. He's one of the guys who he'll set up spinning attacks so easily, and I actually don't mind when he does it. The big concern on the feet is he doesn't check leg kicks. It's a major issue. We've seen it in 2 fights so far. He didn't check leg kicks against Pedro Munoz. He didn't do enough against Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera had a lot of success with the obviously the leg kicks in the first fight. He doesn't offensive wrestle like ever. He's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Pierre Dion took him down 6 times. But to his credit, he did stop a takedown from Aljamain Sterling. He still doesn't face a guy who's shooting like a powerful wrestler. But he stopped a takedown against Sterling in their brief exchange. He's also pretty good at creating a scramble and getting back up. I mean, he did that against Jan, and he showed really good gas tank against Jan, and then he showed it against Marlon Vera, though that wasn't the highest pace fight. I know you said it, but I'm going to say it again. Rob should be undefeated in the UFC. I thought he beat Frankie Saenz, and he definitely beat Ricky Simone. That's so. I said until he loses, I'm going to keep saying it. So I'm going to say it again. I mean, he's an amazing wrestler, but it's not his wrestling that it's his. You mentioned it. it's the unmatched pace. You know, I think about like the Boston Marathon. Yeah, you know the guy who's going to win it is a marathon runner. He's not a sprinter. Like marathon runners obviously run. The guy who wins it is running at an insane speed, but he's, you know, like the countries that are really into that, like Kenya or something, where they're really skinny and they run, but they're not like the guy from Jamaica who's sprinting.
Right.
Merab is like Usain Bolt, but who does that speed for a marathon? It's true. I truly believe he has the best cardio ever. I mean, when we talk about the insane cardio, many times we're talking about insane cardio, we're talking about guys who are heavy striking output guys, not heavy wrestling.
And on top of everything, like if I may interject,
sure.
Even as a wrestler, it'd be one thing if he was a one takedown around guy and just parked in top position, but sure. He's not great at keeping top positions. Why he gets 13 takedowns in a fight? Exactly. That's even more tiring.
And that's not counting the other times he shot and missed, didn't get it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We've never seen anything like it.
He doesn't move back, but when he does, like obviously he does move back sometimes, but when he does, he doesn't just like when someone throws a punch, he doesn't do like one step back and move out of the way. He circles the entire cage and like circles really, and he moves. It's just like, he doesn't know that he doesn't have to like. He looks like when you're trying to catch like a mouse, like a mice sometimes in my like shed. And I'm like trying to get out of the shed, and I'm just like, I have the door open. I'm just like, go off the shed. Like I have the door open, just go. But they like run around like hysterically, and like a freaking bucket I'm trying to catch it with. Like that's how Merab moves around the cage. Like it's just like hysterically moving, but it's like a thing of beauty.
Merab does what the UFC wanted you to think Clay Guida did.
Oh God, yeah, that's so good. Yeah, like. Yeah, you give him Clay Guida's hair and it would fit. Yeah, exactly.
Let Merab fight in that hat and it would.
Yeah, Clay Guida had a lot of like herky jerky movement, but yeah, not to the way Merab did. On the feet, he throws every single strike to end the fight. Like he doesn't throw anything at half speed. He has no fear of getting hit, and he kind of throws punches just to force his opponent back and for them to bring their hands up so he can, you know, make his entries. He also do some like spinning stuff, you know, spinning back fist, very like Chael Sonnen, like all caution to when I'm throwing a spinning back fist. If it lands, cool. I don't care if you hit me. The fear, I like that he put out that he has to eat shots coming in. This is the best striker he's ever faced, including Petr Yan.
Including Jan, including Aldo, like
including this portion of their career, Aldo.
Yeah. Especially what I mean by it, like Jan might be a cleaner striker, or whatever you want to say. Like I don't want to get a debate between Jan striking and O'Malley, but what I mean is the danger of coming in is the guy who starches you with one shot, not the guy who's more a technical boxer. O'Malley's the guy who can end it with one shot better than anybody. So that's why I think stylistically it's the most dangerous. You know, he's got the biggest gun on the mountain. You know, to Merab's credit, he has been kind of cleaning up his striking and throwing more straight shots, but he still throws them as hard as he can. I like that he's adding calf kicks. He had a lot of success with calf kicks against Petr Yan. But more concerning than not only having to get it, he keeps his chin high. And I mean, O'Malley's the guy that can put knockdowns next week. But still, all of his striking is to get the fight to the ground. He's got good entries, but they aren't the best though. Like if I was ranking pure who's the best wrestlers, like Merab's not very high on the list. But if you ask me who has the best mindset, it's Merab. He doesn't care if you block his first dozen entries. He'll eventually take you down. I mean, he shot 49 times against Petr Yan. Good grief.
I mean, he'll shoot just to get his opponent tired, not even get the takedown. Like he just has like, I could do this constantly. I know you can't block these takedowns constantly. And as the fight goes on, if the longer the fight goes on, the more it favors Merab, because the more O'Malley has to stop takedowns, the more he's zapping his own striking power. You know, obviously Merab chains takedowns together well. He'll shoot constant doubles, and then he'll quickly switch to a single. He likes to grab a single and circle one way and then hit a misdirection and bring him down the other way. And what that means is, like you shoot on a single and your head, I mean, it's kind of dangerous. You got to put your head on the inside, but then you press your head on the inside of their leg. And as you turn the hip the other way, so you drop them down to the hip differently than the way you were circling the single to begin with. It's actually something that I used to do a lot when I used to wrestle. Not comparing myself to this guy's wrestling, but like Yanni Diakmahalis would do that a lot. Nick Lee would do something like that a lot. I also love that he has like foot sweeps. He's added foot sweeps to his game. But you mentioned he needs to improve his control. It's the reason why he gets so many takedowns. So I just talked a lot because I just love this fight. I'm so pumped for this fight. And all the media stuff is going to get me even more excited. That said, I think this is going to sound so like, what are you talking about? You just like I circled what do they call it? Like circling reasoning. I think this is I think O'Malley is the worst stylistic matchup possible for Merab, while Merab is still the worst stylistic matchup possible for O'Malley. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can't get Jan taking O'Malley down over and over again. And I understand he did it much differently. He did it coming inside, jabbing into the pocket, stuff like that Merab won't do. I can't see Merab not. You know, I look at O'Malley as his chance of winning is when you when you watch like a boxer say, "Oh, dude, I could beat a wrestler." "Oh, dude, you're gonna shoot in? Shoot in? I'm gonna uppercut you." And it's like you don't realize how quick that shot is. Like it's possible. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's almost like hitting a fastball in baseball. Like, good luck, and not only do you have to land it,
you have to land it hard enough to
knock me out, not just land it. That's how I see O'Malley doing it. Now, don't get me wrong, O'Malley might be freaking Albert Pujols. You know what I mean? Like, all right, sure, I'll knock it out. I just don't think he will. I think Merab closes distance, takes him down over and over again. I think Merab puts on an eye-opening show. I think it's gonna be one of those ones like, holy shit, we knew Merab was good, but look what he just did to Sean O'Malley. I think he dominates him. I think O'Malley will make it to the decision because, like I said, he has that more dog in him, and Merab really isn't a finisher. Yeah. But I think we get like multiple 10-8 rounds. Give me Merab, new UFC champion of the world.
Wow. I love when we disagree. Like we agree a lot because I mean, we talk a lot, you know, and so I hear the things that you observe, you hear the things that I observe. I like when we disagree. Like, and I can absolutely see it going the way you called it, just like you obviously can probably envision the way I called it. So that makes me even more excited for this.
Yeah.
Like, I was already pumped. Like I already said off the top, this is it's definitely the best fight you can make in the UFC without it being a champ versus champ thing. It's one of the best fights you could make in the sport without it being two sitting champs against each other. And as excited as I was for it 2.5 hours ago, I'm more excited now. Like, what a fight this is. And I'm not even going to jump ahead to stuff we're going to talk about on the recap. But
can I say one? I will say one thing on the recap because people are going to be at when I said Merab might be the worst stylistic matchup for O'Malley and Mr. I forgot about Nurmagomedov. So, what's his name? The guy who just beat Sandhagen. What's his first name? Umar. Yeah. I kept thinking of Usman. I knew it wasn't Usman. Umar. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Usman just won like yesterday.
Yeah. So yes. So I'm sorry. He is.
He's coming.
He's coming.
He's coming. But Well,
before you put it in the comments. And how many people already put it in the comments without getting this far into the show?
All right, and that is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 306, also known as Noche UFC, O'Malley versus Dvalishvili. I have been Ben. He's been Keith. If this is your first time listening or watching, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring you as good a mix of in-depth analysis and occasional humorous or historic asides as you'll find anywhere in this business. Please do like, subscribe. None of those things cost you anything. They make our bosses happy and allow us to keep bringing you this content for free. Drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear your take on these fights. But join us for the recap. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after the main event. Keith will take the captain's chair. We will talk about all 10 of these fights from top to bottom, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you, hopefully. The live chat is open that whole time, so we're taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that come hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Make your bed of fairy tales while you're hunting for your whale. So cold and blind, don't care.